Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have guest author Mark Leslie. He's an author of fiction like the Canadian Werewolf series, which is something I would definitely enjoy, want to definitely pick up. But he also writes a lot of nonfiction books, including Haunted Hamilton, Spooky Sudbury, Tomes of Terror about haunted libraries, Creepy Capitals, haunted hospitals. That's an interesting topic. Macabre Montreal and Too Macabre for Montreal. Some true crime stuff too. We're getting into all the weirdness with our guest Mark Leslie after the World Wide Web of Weird tonight. And we do have a lot of weird in the World Wide Web of Weird. Lately it's been hard to figure out what articles I'm going to cover, but we actually have a UFO exclusive from listener Royal tonight we're going to cover first. Got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight, co-host Jamie, not feeling so great because it's 90 degrees and no air in her house, and I don't blame her for wanting to chill out tonight and just watch. Hope you get cooler, Jamie, I know. And then we got Rob, my other beautiful co-host, from St. Augustine, Florida, where it's like 120, right, or something like that?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, luckily we got a little cool down temp here. I got to work a little bit on my gutters and do all that. My wife's doing a great, awesome job on our yard, so enjoying our summer. But I always look forward to these Sunday nights, especially the weird. And we got a lot of weird to get to, so let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we get to do one of my favorite things is when a listener or viewer, a fan of the show, sends me their own or a friend who's given permission. It's paranormal, UFO, Bigfoot footage. I've never gotten Bigfoot. That would be awesome. But sending it in and becoming an exclusive on the show. I don't get it very often. You can always email me, okay? This one is a friend, Royal. Thank you, Royal. He got to me on Messenger, but a lot of times you guys can't get a hold of me on Messenger. Best way to get a hold of me, if you got some great paranormal footage or story you want to tell, email me at paranormalsoup the letter J, and my last name Bland at gmail.com. So that's Paranormal Soup, Jbland at gmail.com. Email me, or get a hold of me. You can try me on Messenger and Facebook if we're Facebook friends, but I'm horrible about checking it. But Royal's got a good one, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, as you can tell, I'm super excited about this. This is from Royal. Now, I'm going to share this because I wanted, when Rob had it, wasn't as big, so I'm going to use my share screen, so it's a little funny here for a second. We were watching it before the show, and I thought, well, my video show's a little bit bigger. So before I play it, let's just get a little, I only have a little bit of background from Royal, who messaged me. And again, thank you, Royal. So he goes, Jason, my brother recorded this video just this afternoon at my niece's high school graduation in Fishkill, New York. It appears to be at least 6 objects in the sky and possibly in some type of formation. I wish he could have recorded longer, but he was in a large crowd and he felt awkward. Yeah, I feel you on that, being the only one recording the sky. What sadly is that there should be more people. More power to him for noticing. And I guess his brother was a retired police officer of 25 years. Thank you for your service. And he generally notices a lot of things, so this is why he probably noticed something different or off. But I wish more people, would notice these kind of things. So let's go ahead and play this beautiful UFO beam footage. It might be hard for you guys to see because it's really faint, but I have a couple edits I've done. One where there's a negative of it, so you can actually see what's going on here. So I don't know if you can tell. There's these. Trying to get this out of the way. Like he said, like 6 lights. There's one all the way up to the right. You might not see it, or to the left. Sorry, to the left up there in the corner that kind of blinks on. I do some zoom-ins of this to try and, get an ascertain, but, it pixelates. Now, here's a negative, so you can actually see what's going on up there. So ignore the stuff on the side. That's just the filter. Here's the zoom-ins. Now, the video clip's about 12 seconds long, so yeah, like you said, you wish you could record it longer, but I get the feeling like I'm the only one noticing this. Okay, I'll put my phone away. And, Royals called in and had some, abductee experiences, let's just say it. I mean, he's had major abductee experiences, and, you wonder if it, has anything to do with the family or following the family, I don't know, but this is my zoom-in of it. It's not like you can tell, it gets really blurry, the pixelation goes nuts. But it's odd. There's this one, you actually see something like shoot out behind it in one of them, and I tried to slow it down. I think I might have did a negative of it too, to see where it seems like something shoots out of it. But it could be just digital distortion because I'm super zoomed in here. What's your thoughts, Rob?
It's got to be something definitely there to be that bright in the daytime. I mean, you can see it was that bright at night, but it's broad daylight. So.
It looks like a perfectly round ball that's moving, circulating. It's undulating or something, but that's the digital distortion possibly, I'm not an expert, people.
Definitely.
But I love that. Here is, I think this is one. See it? Like something shoots out the back. I don't know if it's part of a digital distortion, but this is my negative of it. Up is super zoomed in, just so you can get an idea what it's reflecting light-wise here.
Yeah, it's just almost like big orbs of light or something weird.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of that's digital distortion, I think. Refraction of light too. So it could be perfectly round silver ball alien thing up there, but it's going to look crazy like that.
Yeah.
But I love that. That's my favorite for the World Wide Web Weird. I love getting the stories, unexplained mysteries, Coast to Coast AM. That's a lot of places I go to. Mysterious Universe. Those are great sources for articles. But my favorite is when you guys give it to me, when you guys got a story, or even a story. You don't even have to have evidence or anything. Honestly, I like a good, crazy, I don't know what's going on here, paranormal story. And if, you got a really good one, then I'd like to hear it. Our guest tonight, Mark Leslie, likes to write about these things. There's a reason. It's interesting. All right, let's move on to the next article. And again, thank you, Royal. All right, so... Jetpack Man, blah, blah, blah. Hey, let's say that again. Jetpack Man is back again. I don't know how many of these we've covered, but it's happening. It's still happening. The mystery surrounding the sighting is what appears to be a person flying a jetpack. And this is from Tim Binnell from Coast to Coast. near Los Angeles International Airport was seemingly revived this week when yet another pilot spotted the strange aerial anomaly. The peculiar incident reportedly occurred on Thursday afternoon as an American Airlines jet was approximately 15 miles from LAX and approaching the site of the landing. The normally routine conclusion of the flight took a weird turn when the pilot spotted what they described to be nearby air traffic control tower as a guy with a jetpack soaring through the sky at an altitude of about 4,500 feet. So this is not some amateur with a jetpack. You know, that's pretty high up. And it would seem that neither the pilot nor anyone on the crew managed to photograph or film the suspected jetpack-clad individual. That said, the FAA did issue a statement confirming the report and noted that the agency has worked closely with the FBI to investigate every reported jetpack sighting. So far, none of these sightings have been verified. One working theory is that the pilots may have seen balloons. To that end, Thursday's sighting and the fourth such case of an unidentified flying person reported near LAX over the last 2 years following a pair of sightings in 2020 as well another incident last July. And we're almost July, so this is June, so it's almost a year later since the last one. And we covered it quite a bit. I mean, I don't know why somebody that would have a jetpack, that they're experimental and flying without a license or whatever, would want to bring it so close to an airport. Because you're going to get reported. The pilot has to report that. That's a danger, you know. You're endangering yourself. I mean, it's crazy. 4,500 feet's no joke. That's some serious jetpack going on. It some Iron Man jetpack going on. I don't know. I can't believe the FBI. Go ahead. Sorry.
What if it's not a jetpack man? What if it's a
we wondered that
jetpack alien?
You know? It's been wondered. I mean, we've had that flying humanoids. You know, pretty much a number of times through the World Wide Web of Weird, of flying humanoids and stuff like that. Maybe that's a flying humanoid case. But my real theory is a jetpack man. The sightings describe somebody actually wearing a jetpack. And there's been some video of it. Not near LAX, but there was one, I think another one in California where they thought they videotaped him. I don't remember. We've covered it so many times, I don't know. I can't believe they haven't tracked down the person. It's not like everybody's got a jetpack in their garage.
Yeah.
I mean, the parts, the materials, the knowledge, all that should be trackable and traced down by the FBI. But I guess they got better things to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would think you'd take it seriously. The guy in a jetpack flying near an international airport. It's very dangerous to me that you'd get on top of this. But okay.
We got January 6th to worry about.
No, we're not going to get into that. Okay, let's move on. All right, this one I almost covered this story last week, but I find the Coast to Coast AM recap on this kind of funny. It's about oh, now it won't open. Why is my page not opening? Maybe there we go. I had so much last Sunday I couldn't fit everything in, and this was one of the ones I was going to hold extra, maybe, about somebody calling in about their CCTV camera footage or their security camera footage of a Bigfoot in their yard was reported on social media on a Bigfoot site. That was not that much to it. It was interesting, but I left it out of the World Wide Web Weird. What's interesting, though, is the police response to this whole thing that went viral on Facebook from a Michigan Bigfoot group, I believe it was. An odd update to an alarmingly weird story, again, from Tim Binnell. Authorities in Michigan have called into question reports that they were enlisted to investigate a Sasquatch sighting last weekend. The peculiar case began last Saturday morning at around 1 a.m. when a resident phoned the Shelby Township Police Department with concerns about a curious figure that her home security system had spotted lurking on her property. A Facebook group devoted to monitoring police scanners traffic subsequently reported the call as suspected Sasquatch sighting, which led to multiple media outlets covering the strange incident. However, the department now says it was all a big misunderstanding. In response to the commotion surrounding the call, the Shelby Township Police Department went so far as to issue a press release on Thursday, wherein they explained that the resident had in fact called 911 to report a shadow or silhouette captured on her camera, not the iconic bipedal cryptid known as Sasquatch. The bulletin went on to blame the Facebook group, they actually blamed the Facebook group, for the confusion and stressed that after thorough investigation there was no Bigfoot sighting in Shelby Township and said that the case was simply a suspicious incident. It's just nothing to see here, people. While that would seem to set the record straight on suspected Sasquatch sighting, not everyone is convinced by the announcement. Josh Parsons, who hosts a Michigan-based podcast about Sasquatch, told local media outlet that he has doubts about the department's declaration and posited that a lot of times police want to keep a Bigfoot report quiet. Part of it may be that they don't want to alarm the people. Local Bigfoot researcher Gabe Heiss echoed that sentiment and noted in 1965 case, the city of Monroe, where the police said a caveman statue was to blame for a series of sightings. He went on to observe a Bigfoot encounter in an urban area such as what was some suspect occurred in Sudbury Township last week. And that's what people are debating. I don't think the footage is out there, is it? I haven't seen it. It'd be interesting to know what the actual footage is and let us see for ourselves. It could have all started that she saw a very tall shadowy figure and somebody said Bigfoot. I don't know. But I know police don't want that publicity and they're going to definitely not say something's Bigfoot, but I don't know how much they would go out of their way to hide it if somebody saw a Bigfoot and reported it. I don't know. It's possible. All right, let's move on. All right. This one's been very viral. And I don't know how much you can zoom in on this. It might be really hard for people to see. But they might be familiar with this because it's been all over the Bigfoot pages. Is the smiling Sasquatch. Smiling Sasquatch photographed in Georgia. Curious photograph snapped by a man. Again, it's another one from Tim Binnell. Sorry, it's got the short articles. In Georgia, features an odd anomaly that some suspect is a smiling face of a Sasquatch. Jay Wilson captured the curious image this past May in the city of Decatur when he was exploring a wooded area near the workspace and stumbled upon a series of puzzling tree structures. Astonished by the bizarre discovery, the Bigfoot enthusiast began taking pictures of the branches and appeared to have been bent into place by some kind of powerful force. After sharing the images on social media, Wilson was taken aback when someone pursuing the photos pointed out a rather strange detail in one of the pictures. In the photo, you can be seen a particular form resembling a smiling face of a Sasquatch can be seen peering out from behind one of the trees. Beyond the bent branches, Wilson says he did not notice anything out of the ordinary at the time. I don't know how much you're able to zoom in on that. Yeah, there you go. In the ghost area, we are really would just say pareidolia. This is just matrixing of the mind, seeing images and faces. It's too blurry to say that, but it does look like it could be a smiling Bigfoot. I get why people are saying that. Like he's got a big cheesy grin though.
Yeah, it definitely looks like ears, eyes, nose, mouth.
Yeah, it does have that, but it could be so many different things in that
Yep.
image that just happen to make it look like that. It's really inconclusive. You'd think he'd notice a smiling Bigfoot while he's taking a picture, but you don't know. These things are good at hiding, right?
Yeah, they are the king of hide and seek.
But I've seen a lot of people sharing around. It's interesting, but you really can't. I mean, the skeptics are right when they say it's possibly pareidolia or mixture or matrixing the mind. It's the digital distortion. It's blurry. I don't know. I doubt a Bigfoot would have that big white shiny teeth. I don't think they have a dental plan out in Georgia's forest. Those are some pretty white pearls that show up on there. I think it's weird. I don't know. It's interesting, but I couldn't say, if it's just the mind matrixing an image.
First thing I thought, it looked like a bear, but
the same thing. A bear smiling at you through the woods would be, I don't think they get a dental plan. That's good either.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on. All right, so since we're going to talk a lot about ghosts tonight, I thought this was a good one, and it's from Indiana. Haunted bar for sale in Indiana. An Indiana bar that is said to be haunted by at least 6 ghosts has gone on the market, and the retailer in charge of the listing has highlighted the site's haunted reputation as a selling point. Some people, what I love nowadays, the difference from now and maybe 30 years ago, is that you would never see a retailer list something because it was haunted, usually. Now it's like, ooh, it's a selling point. Not always. For a lot of people, it's not. But for a bar, it would be a good selling point. Where was I? Let's see here. According to a local media report, establishment town known as Breeze Inn is located in the small town of Kempton and has been owned by sisters Cyan Fouch and Tara Flemings for at least 20 years. The duo recently decided to put the pub up for sale, which led to a rather odd conversation with a commercial real estate agent that they enlisted to find a buyer. Initially thinking that the site was just another bar, Abby Statencato recalled that I was about 45 minutes into my listing presentation when one of the owners said, "By the way, did you know the bar was haunted?" As evidence for their stunning claim, the sisters produced a thick binder, and on this website here, this Fox News site, they show a lot of the pictures she has in this binder. As evidence of stunning claim, the sisters produced a thick binder that was stuffed with pictures purportedly showing the various spirits that had been photographed in the bar over the last 2 decades. The total, the pair contended that at least 6 spirits called the bar home, and Fouch indicated that they appear to be fairly comfortable interacting with the patrons, as she observed that they like to play with your hair. As one might imagine, the revelation proved to be something of a quandary for Statencato, who was under no legal obligation to tell prospective buyers about the ghosts believed to be residing at the bar. That's Indiana real estate. They don't have to tell you if a house is haunted here. That said, the retailer reasoned that it was probably unwise to wait under a sale. Had been made before telling the new owners about the apparitions that allegedly attached to the site, since it would undoubtedly freak them out. I mean, eventually they'd find out, but like I said, in Indiana, they couldn't do anything about it. But sometimes these things are selling points. I mean, Zach Baggins. I want to say certain people out there have the money to buy this. Yeah. Some people might think it's a good idea to buy it, and it's a good place for a bar, and have a haunted bar if they're good spirits. But, this is my thing. I think a lot of bars are haunted.
Yeah.
I get spook vibes from a lot of old bars.
I know there's a
just
bunch
because
of that are.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of people that pass on, and that bar was a part of their life or addiction, and it holds them here. I get not always bad vibes from bars, but a lot of times I get this kind of lower bad vibe from bars, and I think it's honestly spirits that are stuck and sticking around there because they had, they dealt with this issue in their life, and then they still do on the after side. It's keeping them here. I don't know. It's not a judgment on people drinking. I mean, you drink, just don't let it make you become a ghost at a bar. Yeah. I would think that would be horrible. But some people like bars. Drink. Yeah, especially if you can drink. But like I said, I think some of these spirits are able to tap into the people drinking there. They get a high of it. Yeah. I always wonder. It's I get bad vibes from bars. All right, well, on the last 2 articles here. This is all about future sci-fi tech gonna kill us. All right, or creep you out. We do spirit box stuff live on the show once in a while. I just did the last call we had from our last show with Dee. It took me forever to get through those ITC calls. I feel so bad. Dee's was a great call, and wish I could have got it out sooner, but it's up now. But we do live ITC. Next time, we might have to mess around with this. I don't know if they have this as a feature yet on Alexa. Upcoming feature to Amazon's popular voice assistant is straight out of an episode of Black Mirror. During Amazon's Remars conference recently, the online shopping giant announced that it was developing a feature that would enable its Alexa smart home assistant to speak using the voice of someone who has died. Senior Vice President Rai Prasad provided a demonstration of this technology by having Alexa read a bedtime story in the voice of his deceased grandmother. Now, if this all sounds a bit unsettling, that's because it is. In fact, a similar idea was used in the plot of it's a great episode, from Black Mirror, which should tell you how weird that actually is. According to Prasad, Alexa will be capable of learning to speak in someone's voice after listening to just 1 minute of recorded speech from that person. I mean, think of what other things they can do. If they can just take 1 minute of your speech and make, I mean, they're talking about virtual identity theft now, where they can literally make a virtual avatar of you and in your voice. Make it say, they can do that. Land of illusion. Yeah. This also suggests the device could listen to someone whose conversation and then learn how to mimic their voice, no doubt adding to the concerns many people have about having devices like this in their home. It's like when Terminator turns around and answers the phone, it's like, yeah, Ralphie's fine, Yeah, it's this is it. We're getting closer to Terminator time, with the AI that can totally just take a minute of your voice and turn around and sound just like you or your deceased grandma. But I wonder what the applications are for ITC, maybe. I don't know. If spirits can mess with electronics and you have this AI that can learn we were just talking about Google's AI last week, how the guy is saying it's sentient. I don't think it's sentient, but that it can learn and speak and almost feel like you're having a conversation with a real person. They have that, programs that get in the now. But if they actually develop an AI that can think for itself a little bit and do that, and spirits can manipulate with electronics, and then they can use a dead person's voice. I don't know. We're getting weird times. Mama never told me it'd be days like these. All right, let's move on to the last one before we run out of time. Speaking of Terminator, if this one doesn't creep you out. This robot creeps me out. It's just this design of this. Elon Musk's AI humanoid robot to be unveiled this September. We talked about it before. Now they're getting ready to unveil like the first prototype. Designed to carry out dangerous and boring tasks in factories. Wait, hold on. No, that's not the right sound effect. That's just the doom. I just added that sound effect too for this, and I totally missed it. Nope, that's not it. No, that's not it. That's it. That's it. They took our jobs. That's where this is going. Measuring 173 centimeters tall and weighing 57 kilograms, it will be able to walk around at 5 miles per hour and is programmed with... Okay, enough took my jobs. Yeah, I know they took your jobs. They're going to take your jobs. It can walk around at about 5 miles per hour and is programmed with an artificial intelligence to help it navigate and carry out its duties. And this all sounds a bit disconnecting, then it's because it is. There are countless science fiction movies involving humanoid robots that have run amok after rebelling against their creators. Optimus, that's the name of this scene, Transformers fan, Elon Musk there probably, will even look the part, resembling something out of iRobot movie. It totally does. It totally resembles something out of iRobot. Like, could you make it more creepier, Elon?
Yeah.
Could you make that stupid thing more creepier? It looks like it has a black face. You can see a void of no soul that's going to strangle you to death in your sleep. You know, Rob doesn't die from coughing over there. I'm sorry, Rob. You know, I'm all for. I am two parts on this. Like the warning, like, have you not watched how this ends in every sci-fi movie? And there's also the mad scientist in me that totally wants to see this thing. I would love to be able to play around with this thing and see what it does. But it creeps me out. Look at this thing. This is like right out of a sci-fi movie. I'm a little excited for September to see what this actually does. There's a lot of hype behind Tesla and a lot of stuff he does, but I don't know. I like I said, it could.
Related.
Yeah, right. I mean, seriously, couldn't make this thing more like an iRobot creepy thing. Like, can't you just picture this thing staring you down as it strangles you to death?
Yeah.
I know. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I watched a lot of movies beyond Terminator about robots taking over and killing you. And this thing looks just like it's right out of one of those movies.
Dude, that's the thing, is those movies that we watched, they're all coming true.
I know. I mean, like I said, China, you know, their system to watch and track people and social media score and all that, it's called Skynet. Like Terminator was not a blueprint. It was not a blueprint for what to do. It was for what not to do.
Yeah.
But that is it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight's guest is author Mark Leslie. He's going to be joining us after this short commercial break, and we're going to talk about his many, many books. He writes a lot of fiction. He has Werewolf in the Canada series, or Canadian Werewolf. I definitely want to check that out. But he has a lot of nonfiction. Haunted Hamilton, Spooky Sudbury, if I said that right, Tomes of Terror, Haunted Libraries, Creepy Capital, Haunted Hospitals, Macabre Montreal, and Two Macabre for Montreal. That sounds really interesting. I would get into Two Macabre. We got a lot to get to, and we will open up phone lines later in the show. We will be back after this short commercial break.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest. The true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is author Mark Leslie. Mark Leslie has been fascinated with the unexplained and the unknown, and then my article went up, since he first heard the telltale signs of these eerie breathings coming from the monsters under his bed. He's long been captivated and drawn to the shadows, and sought out collecting and sharing spooky tales about haunted locations and other strange phenomenon. He's the author and co-author of about a half a dozen books about ghosts and haunted locations that include haunted hospitals, spooky Sudbury, creepy capital, and tomes of terror. Like I said, he got Haunted Hamilton, I think is one of his most recent ones. He's also got some stuff that's a little true crime I would like to get into tonight. Two Macabre from Montreal was a follow-up book to his Macabre Montreal book, because there was stuff in there they felt was too explicit, but we can talk about it, right? We got a lot of weird, I'm sure, to get to. I think this guy's going to be a great guest, but we will open up the phone lines later in the show in about an hour. You can call in, tell us your own spooky tales to share with Mark and myself tonight. Rob is, I think, gone for the night. He's not feeling so well either, so Rob, Jamie, get your rest. You might see him in the chat rooms and that, but we got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right, let's see. Let's bring the guest in. How you doing tonight, Mark?
I'm doing great, Jason. How about you?
Doing great. It's an honor to have you on the show. Oh, shoot. Then my computer's going nuts on me. That's not good. No technical difficulties. There we go. Okay, we're fine.
It's
all right.
an Elon Musk bug in the machine somewhere, right?
Right. It's the AI has heard me. It has heard me, and it's coming after me. I got to get my tinfoil hat and get a VPN and Have you seen the robot though? Did you see that?
That was creepy. Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
I'm a sci-fi fan and a horror fan, and Terminator is like one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. The doom generation I was from the 80s. The world's going to end, either nuclear war and then AI robots or a plague, all that stuff. But AI robots, I really felt like this could be a real thing, and here I am right, and we'll see. I mean, like I said, China named their social programming system Skynet.
No,
like I said, it's not a blueprint.
No.
You hear Kim Jong-un is like his favorite movie is Terminator 2. I'm like, that's my favorite movie too, but I'm a little uncomfortable with a third world dictator having that as his favorite movie. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you're going to put on popcorn. He's going to put something else on.
Yeah, he's going to nuke all of our popcorns for us. Yes, but there's a lot to be terrified in the world, and obviously something that terrified you enough to become a fiction and nonfiction writer about the strange, unusual, and scary stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I was just always fascinated by the things that you can't see, because there was always something hiding in the shadows, right? There was always something hiding in the dark, and that was something that just sort of kept me inspired. And so, I spent most of my life scared. Still, I'm the biggest chicken you'll find. But I was also compelled to want to explore it and write it down. Maybe it's therapy, I don't know. But going on ghost walks, historic ghost walks, etc., I realized there's some really great stories you can tell based on the true stories. And Haunted Hamilton was my first book, and I think it came out.
Oh, that's the first one. Sorry.
Yeah, 2012 I think was when that came out. And that was inspired by a couple things. I moved to Hamilton, Ontario. This is about an hour west of Toronto, city people in the U.S. may be familiar with. And I had gone on a ghost walk with the Haunted Hamilton group and found the stories were so fascinating. And there was so much history that I learned about the region and how Hamilton was connected to so many things. War of 1812, all kinds of things. And I talked to the owners and I said, oh my gosh, you guys have some great stories to share. Have you ever thought of, because I've been a bookseller my whole life too.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of writing a book about it? Because it'd be a book I'd love to sell in my store. And they had said, no, but if you want access to our files, if you want to write one, go ahead. And they gave me full access to all their research. And so that was a start. And then Dundurn Press, my publisher, I was in a meeting in the book industry meeting with a VP of Dundurn Press, and I overheard her say, we've always wanted to write a book of ghost stories about Hamilton. And so I pitched a book of ghost stories about Hamilton, and that's
an easy pitch.
Yeah, it was so easy. And here's the funny thing is, normally publishers take 2 years. You go through the submission process, and it happens after years.
Yeah.
And they emailed me back and they said, if you can get this manuscript to us in a couple weeks, we'll put it in our fall catalog. And it was spring. And so I booked a week off work, took a whole week off work, and spent that week writing the book because I had to get it to them because there's no way I was going to miss that.
My family, that we got to take our first, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and we got to take our first like actual family vacation, leaving Indiana. And I went down to Florida, met one of my co-hosts, Rob, there in St. Augustine, and we went with Rob and did the St. Augustine ghost tour. And, and people there see the ghosts. I've done paranormal investigation. That I always go to these things now and just want to hear the stories. Yeah. People are like, "Ooh, what spooky things have happened here?" And that's what mainly the tour guide's telling you. But she's trying to tell you the history, and I'm like, "All right, shut up, people. I want to hear the history. Yeah. Shut up, kids." My kids loved it though. They loved it. Yeah. They had little K2 meters going around. We're playing hide and seek with the supposed 2 girls that were haunting the basement. And now we want to go on more family vacations. This is like, warms my heart. This is what I dreamed of doing for family vacations. Is go when we go on family vacations, find where's the haunted tour, where's the haunted place, right, we can go to as a family, and go to. So I know. We're going to get into the macabre stuff in Montreal. I want to talk about that. Okay. But for Hamilton, if I were to go to Hamilton, what are some of the interesting sites to see in the history, especially the history?
Well, actually, so one of the interesting things about Hamilton is that there may be a connection to Jack the Ripper there, since you do like the macabre.
Ooh. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because we've had, oh, God, now my brain is going, Jeffrey Mudgett on the show, who claimed his ancestor, who is H.H. Holmes, is Jack the Ripper. So this should be interesting. Okay. We've had a Jack the Ripper show.
Oh, wow. That was, but you were mentioning family event. Mm-hmm. And I remember when Haunted Hamilton came out, I had an event at the downtown library, could fit about 100 people into the auditorium, had the local bookstore there. And what we did is we did a free 30-minute tour of downtown Hamilton. And it was probably about 3 or 4 spots, haunted spots right close to the library. And that was sort of a kind of a gimmick to get people to come. Hey, come to this book signing, because no one wants to go to a book signing, but they want to go on a free haunted walk. So after the book signing and everything, there was the walk. And my son was there, and I think he might have been 8 at the time. And I never forget. So they took us on a tour. They told us a couple of the things, and then they took us into this alleyway, which it wasn't necessarily an alleyway where murders happened, but they were telling us the story of the connection to Jack the Ripper because, the dead prostitutes were found all over the place in the UK. And later on, someone had shared a picture of the group of people, and there's my son standing beside me, and his eyes were like saucers. I never thought anyone could look more scared than me. And I didn't realize, I'm like, well, maybe this isn't a good thing to be taking my son to.
Well, that's what I was worried about. My boys loved it. Like I was like, are they going to be scared or not? No. They're so my genetics offspring. They're just so into
they're really into it. But again, they can learn the history, and the history is a lot more fun.
Yes,
when you tell it with ghosts. So a couple other things. Hamilton, some of the ghosts of downtown are the haunted armories, which are right downtown, and there's even a ghost cat there. They even have the mummified remains of the cat that was found in the building that's on display there.
Yeah, no wonder you got a ghost cat.
Yeah, and you've got a haunted Tivoli theater. Now, half of the theater has been torn down, but there's still a part of the building standing, and is still being used at the front. And there's a lot of mystery related to ghost voices, and even there's Ambrose Small who disappeared related to that. And again, it's an unsolved mystery from Hamilton. I think, Jason, you were talking about enjoying the macabre. I'm not sure if you've heard of the torso murders that happened in Hamilton, but this is Evelyn Dick.
Sounds familiar.
Evelyn Dick, who basically chopped her husband up into pieces, and it was just a torso of him left, and the arms and the legs and his head were found scattered on the Hamilton Mountain. So this is the Niagara Escarpment. So we call it the mountain. It's not a real mountain, but that's real. And so, and this was she was like this femme fatale who the media loved her because she was a gorgeous, very sexy woman.
This sounds familiar.
Think Kathleen Robertson, the actress who was on 90210, probably most well known on 90210, she played Evelyn Dick in the movie, based on that. And again, Evelyn Dick played up to the media. Everyone loved her because she was this beautiful, sexy woman. But there was also a great song called "How Could You, Mrs. Dick?" You chopped off his arms, you chopped off his legs, you chopped off his head. How could you miss his dick? Which was a really fun play on words.
When did that happen? When did that take place with Evelyn Dick? Because it sounds familiar.
The 50s in Hamilton. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I'm in LaPorte County, and we're famous for a femme fatale, is Belle Guinness, who chopped up a bunch of would-be husbands who would come to her farm. You know, she put a little advertisement in. This is at the same time the World's Fair and H.H. Holmes was going on. I think she got some of her tidbits or ideas from that. But she was, they think she killed over 40 men. And very haunted property that I investigated the house that sat on the house she burnt down to fake her death and escape.
Okay.
Because officially she's dead. I got to investigate that house and that property, and there's still probably pieces of bodies there. And man, there was definitely some activity and spontaneous fires would happen. That so.
Oh really?
You know,
wow.
Yeah. So when you get these like very macabre like murders, real time true crime stuff, I love it. But at the same time, there's a scar that's left over by these incidents of these people and what they do that makes it great for the paranormal, spooky kind of, ghost stories.
Right. Well, it also leads to the thought of what is a haunting. Is it actually the spirit of the departed, or is a haunting something that happened that was so outrageously traumatic that it left an impression on space and time? And what we're seeing, like a cathode ray tube, is that it's burned in that space, and maybe you're not seeing the spirit, but maybe you're seeing a replay of that thing that went down.
I've thought about that ever since I was a kid, and I saw the movie, which I love. Up in my top movies is High Spirits. Remember that movie?
Oh my God, I
With
haven't
Gutenberg?
seen that in ages. Yeah.
Yeah. And in that, it was Liam Neeson was playing this Scottish ghost with what's her name, mermaid. Oh, I can't think of the actress's name. She's a ghost.
Oh wow, she was young in that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. High Spirits, people, go check it out.
Man, I gotta watch that again.
Yeah. Well, they're like two ghosts, and like they replay like the same event over and over and over and over again. But Gutenberg wakes her up from it, like brings her out of it.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah. Like it's always been the question: are ghosts imprinting? Is this not really a spirit, just a replay?
Yeah.
Or are ghosts actually in some torturous loop in hell, replaying their own death? I would like. Yeah. Well, and Gutenberg saved her. I don't know, but. He couldn't save his career, but whatever. But
he just did another Police Academy 12.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh God, no. He was in a TV show I saw recently, and he's just as weird. But off topic. But the idea is is it an imprint, or are the actual spirits literally replaying out the scenes? I would like to think it's an imprint when it's something that happens. Like when people see something continuously, like everybody sees the same spirit doing the same thing at different times. They've seen a spirit doing that. It's an imprint. I would hate to think a soul's trapped replaying something over and over again.
Yeah, that's like torture. That's hell.
Like a internal Groundhog Day or something,
We need Steve Gutenberg to save us then.
Yes, we do. Yeah. We do. But in that, that like I said, that movie that he pulls her out of it. That's what I'm wondering is like some of these locations in these stories, have you seen any insight like in Hamilton to actual spirit communication, like spirits trying to do stuff not in like replay or whatever, but like actually trying to reach out, like solve my murder for
some of them are really touching too when there's actually interactivity between a human and a spirit. And so there's ruins in Ancaster, which is just on the outskirts of Hamilton. And there was a woman who ironically wrote articles about ghosts of Hamilton because it was very popular back in like 1890 and stuff like that. You would find lots of articles about ghosts in newspapers, which is great for research. And she ended up, her house burnt down, the whole mansion that she was there. She was the last surviving member of the family. She even ended up putting a tent on the lot and trying to stay there because she didn't want to leave. She never wanted to leave that land. And there's just the, three of the walls of the mansion left, the rock and the brick. And she eventually died. And there was a story of an architecture student who in the middle of the afternoon was walking, and it's a beautiful hike through this wilderness area on the outskirts of the greater city of Hamilton. As you come up over the hill and you can see the beautiful ruins, and as this architecture student who'd come in from Toronto was walking in on a beautiful sunny afternoon, so there's nothing spooky about it, he saw a woman standing there, an old woman standing there, and she was just standing looking at something. He looked at what she was looking at, and he saw the ruins, and then she turned to look at him and saw him looking at the ruins, and then she looked back, and what he saw when she looked back was this gorgeous stately mansion, which looked like it was, right where the ruins were, and it was the original mansion. And then she looked back at him, and then she disappeared. And so it was almost like she was happy that someone else could finally see what she always saw on that land. And that was a really beautiful story related to, otherwise most of the stories about that place are pretty scary.
Well, yeah, I love those stories though, because it's almost like a time slip story a little bit when you actually have not just the ghosts, but the whole structure of a house mansion. Up here, we have Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and when you walk through those woods, you hear the story of a house that appears in those woods and disappears. Like I've always been fascinated by the idea of like structures that are so imprinted once they're gone, torn down, burnt down, which is like the way of many haunted houses. Some reason they burn down, is that people get glimpses of the house reappearing. Yeah, I think is that a time slip? Is that spirits manifesting that structure? That's always fascinated me.
Well, and places are fascinating too, because oftentimes, I mean, most of the ghosts I've written about are associated with a place. And is the place itself haunted? Is the ghost haunting the place? Is the place? Yeah. So there's a real, and we put a lot of emphasis as humans on place, right? This was the place we met. This was where we had our first date. This was where you were born. This was, et cetera, et cetera, et
This
cetera.
is my home.
Yeah, and home too. And I think a lot of emotion comes out of that. When Rhonda Parrish and I were writing Haunted Hospitals, we thought about hospitals as a place. If ever, and again, I approached the books with a little bit of open-minded skepticism, right? I'm looking for proof, but if I find evidence that this maybe it was just an electrical problem, that the lights were flickering, we'll share that.
Yeah.
But if there was ever a place that you would think to be haunted, it's got to be hospitals, because this is the place where people come in and out of the world, right? It's
exactly.
where we come into the world, we come out of the world, and trauma and emotions run so high. If ever regardless of what you believe a haunting is, the hospitals have got to be on the top of the list.
Yes, right? I personally have experienced that. I grew up, my mom worked in a hospital for 17 years, St. Anthony's. They just tore it down last year. But my first apartment with my wife was right across the street from that. Now, that apartment was extremely haunted. We had all kinds of stuff happen, but I swear I always told my wife, I feel like it's connected to this hospital. Our corner of our room pointed right at the hospital. We were in an upper apartment, and one night we're laying in bed, and I started seeing like this greenish, it would like turn to green to red, slight just haze, mist coming through the corner of the room. And I go to my wife, we're just sitting there, she, getting ready to go to bed, and the lights are out, and I go, "Hey, are you awake?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, can you see what I'm seeing in the corner? She goes, I do. I said, "Tell me what you're seeing." She describes what she's seeing, and we laid in that bed for a good 20 minutes, I felt like, or 30 minutes, I don't know, and that mist started to turn into faces. I'm like, "Are you seeing this?" She's like, "Yes."
Really?
And I felt like it was spirits from the hospital literally coming over to check out what's going on over here. I've always felt, growing, like I say, spending time in the hospital, I was always watched when I was in there. I always felt like I'm being watched, like, and they, it was a over 100-year-old hospital that they had done a lot of additions and changes to, and then they just tore it all down because it was just so not stable anymore. After spending tons of money remodeling and adding on and a parking garage, they finally just tore it all down. And now I wonder where those spirits are. What happens then?
Well, you that reminded me of a story. One of the stories from Haunted Hamilton that scared me the most, and your story really brought that back to me. It was up on Hamilton Mountain, and a man and woman were laying in bed at night, and he's sleeping, and he wakes up to the sound of his wife screaming her head off in abject terror, and he sits up and says, "What's wrong?" And she says, "There's a woman floating above our bed."
Ooh.
And it freaked her out. finally got back, finally got back to bed. It kept happening every night, and she would wake up laying on her back. She would look up, and she would see this woman with these sunken dark eye sockets. You couldn't even see her eyes, kind of just hovering just about a foot or two above the bed, and her mouth was open as if she was letting out a gut-wrenching scream of terror, but you couldn't hear anything.
Is she like floating face to face to her?
Like, yeah, like just a foot or so above the bed. And as she kept coming and coming, and she kept having these, and he's like, we got to get you to a doctor. You're having these nightmares. And she would describe the woman as not having a body, just having arms and a torso and a head. She would never see the legs, like anything below the waist.
Yeah.
And they eventually, sleeping pills didn't matter what they did. They ended up bringing an exorcist in. And again, this was documented in the Hamilton Spectator, the newspaper.
Yeah.
And they brought in an exorcist. They brought in priests. They brought in all kinds of paranormal investigators, imported from the U.S. And what they found was this was allegedly the spirit of a woman who had died in a building that was on this property. Now, this was an apartment they had in a building, and they believe it was a woman who had died there, but she was in a wheelchair, and they weren't sure why she kept appearing. It wasn't until about 10 years later, and they were tearing this apartment building down, that they found, one of the things that would happen is sometimes when she woke up and the woman woke up and saw the other woman screaming, the woman would go off into the corner. That's what reminded me of going off into that one corner where you said you saw the apparitions. She just kept disappearing into the corner. 10 years later, they'd moved out. They'd moved on to a different place. They couldn't figure out what it was. They found the remnants of tombstones in the wall where in that side of the building. And they were the tombstones of this woman's. They ended up finding out the names and the tombstones, and they found out this woman who had had her legs crushed in an accident, and it was her children. And they believe that the woman was trying to, get them to the tombstone, so maybe that they could rest in peace or something. But obviously nothing was ever seen because that became a parking lot. But that was just the freakiest thing. So when you talked about that, I was like, so sometimes when I'm lying at night, I don't want to open my eyes and see if there's anything hovering just above me.
See, when you get in my weird life, I mean, for me, I when I was 5 years old, me and my cousin saw a green floating head. I've had weirdness all my life. I've seen tons of stuff. Like me and my wife, most people would be getting up, turning on the lights, probably seeing glowing faces coming out of the corner of the room. But me and my wife, we've been in the weird forever, and we just sat back and watched it. This is before. I wish I had a cell phone back then. I didn't. But because I would have had it right by my bed and be like, I'm recording this crap, but. But that's how we are, like I've experienced and see after we did the Bell Guinness location, the infamous serial killer that she was, whatever, accused, I guess. I had a couple instances with this girl in a dirty dress. One time walking in, and I had another investigator quit because these things can follow. Just so you know, people, they can follow. He quit after we did the Bell Guinness thing. He had a bunch of weird stuff going on, seeing stuff and all that. He's like, I'm done. And he had all this paranormal equipment he bought. He was totally into it. And he's like, I'm done. Because he was like doing all this stuff to ward his house. Me and my wife like, yeah, we'll just ward the house and we're good. But I walked into one of our rooms. Is now my youngest son's room. At the time we had no kids. But I walked in there and I see for 5 seconds and I rub my eyes and it's gone. This body of a girl, the head's in my ceiling. Almost like she's hanging, coming down. And I jumped back. And I'm like, what am I seeing? Just startled, and then it was gone. Ooh. Later on, a week later, my wife, I'm laying there, and I'm like, I can see the silhouette. We're in the dark, laying in her bed of a girl about the same height as what I saw hanging over me, doing this, waving her hands. And I go, Susan, do you see something over me? And she goes, yes, I do. Then we got up and turned the light on.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was a bit weird. So she rewarded the house, and we didn't have any issues. And I always wonder if that was related to Belle Guinness. She had murdered her. She had the reason I wondered, because of the head being just floating there, no head, but it was her head was in the ceiling. She had decapitated a foster daughter of hers and used the body to basically pretend it was in a fire. She killed all of her children, including this girl, and made the girl look like it was her body, so she could take off.
Oh, so she could escape. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And why follow me? I can't help you. All of it. But I tell this as a paranormal investigator, people, you do have to, I say there's nothing really to be scared of, but don't be surprised if something does follow you home, especially if you have a little of a sense or you've experienced these scenes a lot or can see things that these scenes do try to get your attention.
Yeah.
Like it was trying to get her attention about the tombstones. It's like, why is the burial? I mean, their tombstone matter to them. They're dead, but somehow these connections or these scenes they want to try to get across to people.
Yes, I want my story to be known, and then I'm going to rest. You reminded me of a story from Tomes of Terror, which was there's a Rivendale bookstore, used bookstore in near Barrie, Ontario, and there was a gentleman who went and bought a World War II history book because he was a history buff, and bought it at the used bookstore, and he brought it back home and wake up in the middle of the night, and he'd look over and he'd see a man in this old soldier's uniform standing by his closet, and eventually he just kept seeing him. Eventually, when he brought a priest into the house to see what was going on, the priest actually realized, he put two and two together after determining that this was the owner of the book, who was attached to the book he brought home, and he said, "You can exercise the house, or why don't you just bring the book back to the bookstore?" And he brought the book back to the bookstore, and the man stopped appearing in the middle of the night, right near, that side of his bed where he had the book on his nightstand. And I thought, well, okay, so I'm always going to be cautious when I go to a used bookstore now.
Or
see what I might bring back with me.
Or antiquing. Like we talk about, ghosts being attached to places. Sometimes they're attached to objects. A book is an interesting one. If I was a ghost, I would totally haunt a library. That'd be my, except as long as I can read over people's shoulders.
As long as you can read in the dark, right? Yeah.
Right, or that too. I've always been I love libraries and books, and we on the show we've talked about haunted archetypes or places that always seem to attract hauntings, and libraries, hospitals. You should do one on hotels. A lot of life and death going on there.
I've stayed in enough of them, and I've got some. I'm probably going to do one eventually, because obviously hotels come up a lot in some of the other books too, right?
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah, there's it's these places where humans leave their imprint, even briefly. But if they do it, in dramatic ways, it leaves an imprint on the location. It's interesting, why these spirits stick around. But like I said, when it comes to antiquing, you better watch out. You don't know what you might bring home with you.
That is so true when you think about that. It's funny. I actually wrote, because I write fiction as well, and I tend to write a lot of horror for obvious reasons.
No, really, would have never imagined.
Imagine that, eh? But one of the stories I wrote was called Requiem, and the thought was, what would happen if a collector of haunted items got trapped in this house with all of the items he collected, but normally we can't see the things, right? Most of us can't see or perceive the paranormal. And sometimes you wonder if there's people who are more in tune and they're more sensitive, so they can pick these things up. And so he has all of these collected items, and he doesn't see any of the ghosts until he brings in this haunted cabinet, like this Victorian mirror dresser with a mirror built into it. And it's only through the mirror that he can see the ghosts attached with all the different objects he has.
Oh, yeah.
And that was inspired by a story a friend of mine at the bookstore I was working at the time told about a haunted cabinet that was in a museum, and guard after guard after guard would quit because they kept seeing this young girl they nicknamed Victoria. Victoria's cabinet was the name of the object. And she was constantly just fixing her hair as if she could never get it right. She would turn around and disappear, and they would just see that over and over and over. And it was driving them crazy. So a lot of them quit. And so that kind of inspired me. It's like, well, what if we brought that drawer into a room of other haunted artifacts, and suddenly you can see all the ghosts. And so again, a lot of the stories I hear, that I never wrote about that because I didn't. It was just more of a hearsay story. I always like to get details, like first.
But it made for a good story, though.
Yeah, an article. I need enough to write a chapter on it. So I was never able to use it in my nonfiction, but I was definitely able to play with the fiction aspect of it. So I have I'm kind of lucky. I can kind of use it for fiction, or I can just kind of dig deeper.
I've been trying to write, and I suck. I never finish anything. I have a lot of dead novels and notebooks. I've just said, I hate this. I'm trying to get back into it, but I used to get into a lot of horror. I was definitely a Stephen King fan, and I always loved his story of what inspired him for The Shining. going into he put his they checked in, they found this hotel, the Stanley hotel. They found it and got a room. Nobody was there. It's the off season, and he goes and puts his bags in the room, and him and his wife go to check out the grounds and come back, and all of his bags are undone and his clothes are put away. And he goes down to the desk and he goes, thanks for putting my clothes away, but I really am uncomfortable with somebody doing that. It's like, we didn't do it. That's that. What room are you in? Oh yeah, that's that room. And then he went and wrote like the first 13 pages or whatever on like on a desk there. Got the idea for it. The only other thing would remind me of the haunted antiques. There was when I was a kid, I used to stay up really late at night with my cousins. We'd spend the night at my grandparents'. We'd stay late at night on the weekend to watch Friday the 13th, the series. Remember that?
The series. Oh yeah.
It wasn't Jason Voorhees. It had nothing to do with that. It was Friday the 13th. Yeah.
It was just paranormal stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was an antique shop that these two cousins inherit.
That.
Yeah, and all the objects are like possessed by the devil that this guy collected, and of course they went and sold them all when they get the shop, and then they find out, whoops, we got to get all those back. And it's like a whole series, and it was
that was a
all
great,
twisted.
episodic way to get through all those objects. Yeah,
but that's my science fiction horror brain loves that kind of stuff. Like as a kid, I loved all that horror, spirits, devil possession, all that stuff. Yeah, totally loved it. And these paranormal true stuff like this does lead to great fiction. Like for you, what has inspired you? Like you think like something really like it scares you to your soul, kind of true paranormal history that you've encountered or found about.
Well, that was one. I think one of the ones was. And this one made it into haunted hospitals, and it was on a show very much like this. I'm sure Coast to Coast with George Norrie.
Oh, yes, I do.
I think you mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, and I was on talking. Can't remember which one of my books it was. It was many years ago. I was in my apartment in Hamilton at the time, and my partner Liz, she like tonight she's gone to bed already. She's got to get up early and get going to work. I'm a writer. I can sleep in.
Right.
So, and I'm in my living room at the computer, sitting there on with headphones on and talking. And we got a call from somebody from Alberta, in Canada, and he had talked about working at an asylum that when he was an orderly there, and he shared a story about this woman who had spent her entire life there in the institution, and they believed she was possessed, and weird things would happen. Like she would be freezing cold. They'd go into her room would be ice, like an ice box.
Oh yeah.
And then they would check, and there was nothing wrong with the heater or whatever, so they'd move her into another room, and within an hour the room she came from was perfectly fine, and the room she moved into was cold, so they stopped moving her around. She would get very, very violent. It would take, 4 or 5 men just to hold her down, and she would be throwing them across the room. They constantly had to be, injecting her with, anesthesia. Yeah, just to calm her down sometimes when she got into this. But this one time he was on an overnight shift, and he went into her room, and he walked into the room, opened the door, and he said, she was standing in her sleep, but she was standing with her feet on the wall, and she was perpendicular.
Oh, Jesus.
Like maybe about 3 feet off the ground. Her hair was hanging down over her face, so you couldn't see her face, but she was looking down. And he just walked in, he saw her, and he walked back. And he left. He didn't say anything. He didn't go check her room again for the rest of the night. He didn't tell anyone.
Nope.
Until that radio program. And I'm sitting there with him telling this story in the dark. And Liz is the brave one. I would go get her to comfort me and protect me, which I've done many, many times. And I just remember the chills that came to me. So I got a hold of George's producer, and I said, I got to talk to that guy because I'm working on haunted hospitals. I need this story. By the time I got a hold of him, he had met with a friend of his who worked there, who had been listening to the show, who had a similar incident. and he hadn't told anyone until he heard this guy, and he recognized his voice and knew who he was. He had gone into that woman's room and saw her standing in her sleep some other night, but she was standing straight up, facing him. Her eyes were open, but she was sleeping.
Yeah.
And she was just levitating about a foot off the floor, but like, perfectly upright. And his friend told him that, Tim Hortons is a coffee shop, kind of like Dunkin' Donuts in the U.S. And that was a cool story. So by the time I got the two stories together, that made it into it, and that still freaks me out.
Yeah, but this is a living person. This isn't a ghost. This is a person in an asylum. And there's so many haunted asylums. Penhurst. I mean, famous haunted asylums. They all seem to be haunted afterwards. People go in there with personal demons, but some people might actually go in there with actual demons. And nobody's gonna recognize it, and they're stuck there. And all they're doing is giving them a bunch of antipsychotics and sedating them, and the people are like, yeah, but I don't, nothing to see here, people. Move along.
Yeah, exactly.
And we just lock the door, lock the door. Like that guy, he just shut the door and turned around and left it. And this is the thing is, what you want to think is scary is she's probably not the only one. There's probably been a number of these in different asylums and throughout history in the world. Yeah, where they've gotten somebody who, because I don't know how far you go into believing about all this, but I had a person when I was 17, 18, I had an encounter with what I call a shadow person. I don't like to qualify it as a demon. I don't know what it was.
Right.
But it followed me home and two other friends. It messed with three of us.
Oh, jeez.
At a location I had no idea at the time had a bunch of mysterious deaths by train.
Right.
Basically, 3 kids ripped apart by a train. One person laid their head down in the same spot on those tracks. Another kid was killed. It's a bad spot. Makes story short, which I have a long story, Mike Ricksucker's Paranormal Encounters, 2nd volume. This thing tortured me for 4 months and eventually levitated me up off my bed and threw me down. This is why I do the show. It threw me down 3 times. The third time it lifted me up, I could feel my nose hit the prickles on my ceiling. I had one of those stucco-like ceilings.
Got them right
and
there,
I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But in my mind, I was going, God, please save me. God, please save me. And so there was a flash of light. This thing went, it had like a jackal Joker kind of voice laugh thing going on in my head. I don't know if I was actually hearing it in my ears. Yeah. Screeched this time, not laughing, and was gone. And I saw somebody that might have been my great-grandparent. I know I'm trying to make a very long story short. And everybody's heard it already before. It is. I wrote it all out. I did write that all out. Like I said, Paranormal Encounters, Mike Ricksucker, who we're going to have back on the show in October.
So I can buy that book, you're saying?
Yeah, Paranormal Encounters Volume 2. Okay. But we're here to buy your books. But I was just saying, I have my story. It's like the longest story in there. It's like 50 pages. Mike's like, oh, wow, okay, yeah. I was like, you told me to write it all out, buddy. He's got like these 2-page stories. But, that convinced me that I went through this. I was at the brink of losing my mind. Like, I was 18 years old. I thought no one I could talk to about this. I got lucky. I feel God saved me. And I'm not like Jesus saved me, I'm Christian. No, I still am open and I'm spiritual, right. But I do believe in a higher power that saved me that night. Right. Honestly, I feel after years of retrospective that there's so many other people who are encountering these things, have no one to talk to, especially back in the day. Where did they end up when they started to lose their mind? Because my mom had me go to a psychologist. She didn't know what was going on. I didn't tell her what was going on. Right. I felt you're going to think I'm crazy. I couldn't tell the psychologist what was going on. You can't tell anybody. So they just think you're crazy if you do. And some people do tell, and they end up in these asylums, and next you know, the room's dropping to 30 degrees.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're floating in the air, and they're like, oh, just close the door. Nope, nothing to see.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
And you're screwed. So that's why I do this show, is to give people an outlet and a place where they can tell these stories and not be judged about it.
Yeah, that's true, because no one else is going to believe them.
Right.
When you think about that. Yeah, wow.
You want to write a scary story about somebody being possessed and ending up in a psych ward, and they don't believe them.
And
how the heck do you get out of that?
Yeah.
You're screwed.
Yeah, I remember one of the earliest horror stories I wrote when I was a kid. I think it was in my teens, because I started writing scary stuff when I was about 14. And it was a new kind of drug that was being pushed onto the market, but the drug just allowed a demon to possess you. So it opened up your vulnerability. And so people thought they were just having a freaky episode with some acid, but they were actually being possessed. and they were being tortured by demons and stuff like that. And that was that hell of, it's just a druggie, right? It's just a drug-induced whatever. And I guess it would probably look like something
PCP,
of the latest
people.
Stranger Things season 4 or something kind of thing with the body. But that was kind of like, so a lot of those kinds of things have made it into fiction for me.
But there's reality to that, because we have our World Wide Web of Weird news segment we do, and a number of years ago we had a number of different stories at times about Flocka. Remember Flocka, that drug? People literally take off their clothes. You thought PCP was bad. This stuff, people take off their clothes. We have a video of a guy who took off his clothes and literally jumps on top of somebody's hood, and the person takes off, and this person's running naked and still getting on top of the car, like superhuman strength, like trying to attack people. And that's not the only one. I mean, there's others. And this drug Flocka was going around, and some people I had on the show, I think I had two different guests basically say it's a drug that opens you up to demonic possession, and those people are demonically possessed, and that scared the crap out of me.
Oh, that's freaky. So it's funny when you mentioned the segment. So when you guys were talking earlier in the segment, you're from Indiana, right?
Yeah.
So you had talked about the haunted bar that's for sale in Kempton?
Yeah.
I'm furiously writing this down because I'm researching for a book called Spirits Untapped: Haunted Bars and Breweries.
Oh, that's another one. You heard my feelings about haunted bars.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't want to be stuck in one. You could be in a library, but not in a bar, right?
I'm not a drinker. I can't stand drunks, so I don't want to be in a bar. It would be horrible for me.
That would be hell. Yeah.
But it might be hell for them if they can't drink. But this is my thing, though. I've had experiences with people on that who, I swear, they go to a certain bar and they pick up a spirit there, because this bar has got some dark stuff. I won't say what bar, but I think there's spirits there that latch onto people because they were alcoholics in life. They're still in that wanting, or that hungry ghosts, like the Tibetan Buddhists would talk about, hungry ghosts. Yeah. They're feeding off the energy of those who are getting drunk, and they talk about spiritual possession. They say alcohol and drugs leave your doors open for it, and what better way for a spirit is in a bar.
Wow, that makes so much sense. You're just giving me some great ideas for fiction too, based on that premise, based on the idea of the I'm gonna pour a spirit into my body. That's what it is.
It's spirits. Yep, it's called a spirit. No, exactly.
Of course. What an interesting concept for wow. But there are so many bar and brewery stories, and Liz and I have traveled to many of them.
Yeah,
we even have a little map we did on Google Maps that we have a map that includes any bar we've ever been to together. But then we also have a little ghost symbol if it was a haunted bar.
It was haunted. The only ones me and my wife are interested in, because she doesn't drink either, are the haunted bars. There's something, I honestly think it's the idea the Tibetan Buddhist monks had of hungry ghosts. Ghosts are staying here because of their attachment, especially to alcohol or whatever. I mean, I give ever since I was even a kid, and I couldn't go into bars legally, but I'd end up in a bar for a certain situation, whatever. I always had bad vibes from bars. Yeah. Especially when I can think of when I'd actually been in there when I was a little kid for something, and then my mom had to take me in there. I remember getting just like I'm watched. I never liked that bar, but I know a ton of people would go there, and to me, there's something there that latches onto people. And, I've seen people, they are not themselves sometimes. Some people, when they get out blackout drunk, they don't remember what they're doing. They are literally totally different personality.
Yeah, that's true. Wow. So one of the bar I used to haunt was called the Winking Judge in Hamilton, Ontario. And I was a regular there. And there were so many stories from the regulars who had been there, for decades. And they had so many different stories about things. But one of the ones came from the owner, Mary, who had shared this story because she owned a bar, so she was constantly there. So her daughter would be there all the time with her, and the bar didn't open until 3:00 in the afternoon. So she would go oftentimes with her daughter would be with her until she could get someone to look after her daughter at home, but her daughter would be with her from like noon till 3 while she was getting everything ready. And her daughter would be playing like upstairs and stuff. And it's basically an old renovated house, 3-level house. The top level was just where they stored everything. It was cut off, but the customers could go on the main floor upstairs. Downstairs where I had all the kegs. It was just like an old, not even finished basement. And and she remembers hearing her daughter talking upstairs, and she went up there, and again, this is before cell phones and stuff like that, and she's like, "Who are you talking to?" "Oh, the nice man in the tall hat," because they nicknamed him the judge. There was this old man in, like, a Lincoln style hat that was constantly seen sitting in the corner drinking. You're like, but there's nobody over there. And so he was regularly seen there. But that was, and then it just became a thing where people would just see that. They also had a ghost cat that you would be sitting at the bar, sitting on one of the tables, and you would feel a cat brush your legs as if it wanted to be petted. So you'd reach down, and there's nothing there. And so that was an intriguing place. I hung out there for a number of years with my son. I got the tour of the attic. I got a tour of the basement and all the creepy spots, but I never saw anything but drunk people.
Again, why would I not want my spirit to be trapped in a bar? Because I can't stand drunk people. They talk too close and too loud. And, I'm not a fan of drunk people. But like I said, there's something about bars, especially bars can be very old. They keep keep them around, especially if you get to places like Philadelphia, where bars were the founding fathers of our country would meet in back rooms and discuss about dumping buckets of tea in the ocean to revolt. I'm just saying, there's a lot of history in bars. I mean, you get into even the Prohibition times and the secret bars and stuff like that. When here in Michigan City, Indiana, where I live, there's a lot of stuff connected to Al Capone, because he would run some of his liquor through here. My cousin lived in a house that had basically like a secret passage that led to another house, and the story was it was like a secret distillery little area that they had going on here and all that. And then there's like a bridge called Devil's Bridge, where supposedly Al Capone had a couple hits taken out on people under that bridge. There's so much history, and when it comes to alcohol and the bars and the secret bars and all that stuff, that is dark, because people get drunk, they end up doing some stupid things. But at the same time, there's other, I swear there's an imprint left by those people, or it's really their soul here attached to those that are drinking now. And I'm not trying to be like a PSA, please don't drink or demons will possess your soul. I'm just saying that you do open yourself up, and these places could be little areas for spirits that want to take a ride.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
One story idea I had, don't steal it, is about a bar that where they have all these like serial killings happening, and it's different people doing the killing, but it's the same spirit taking that person from the bar.
Oh, that's intriguing. Yeah, and they think all these different people are. Oh, that's a intriguing. You should get that story out there.
Yeah, I got another one I'm working on. Have you seen the show Ghosts? They have the BBC version, and then this year they had the American version, which I love both.
No, I haven't.
You should check it out. It's a comedy. It's actually a comedy. Yeah, the BBC was the first one I saw. They have like 3 or 4 seasons, and it's hilarious. And now they have an American version, but it's all about like this couple that gets inherited a mansion, and all these ghosts have been trapped there. And she ends up having an accident, the woman that lives in the house, and now she can see them. So then they're getting her to do stuff for, like, the one guy's, like, turn on the military channel, because he's from the World War II and the BBC version and all that. And it got me, like, the news story I'm working on is, like, what is the idea, what would it be like to be a ghost trapped somewhere, like this, and have to watch the world go by, without anybody hearing or noticing you, and you have to, what would that be like for a ghost? That's the perspective I want to get into writing. Is like, what is that like? It's not, you can get an idea what heaven is. I'll tell you this, some of my favorite movies, and I didn't realize this till doing this show many years later, are all about the afterlife. What Dreams May Come. Oh, dang it! Now, High Spirits, but there's the other, Defending Your Life.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen Defending Your Life?
No.
It's another comedy. Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Like all these movies I loved, all have to do with like the afterlife. I have a fascination with one, what's hauntings like, and two, what's the afterlife like, and it's like, what is it, that perspective from the other side? And being a paranormal investigator, it's like you get a little bit of a look or little glimpses of what it might be like for spirits. You know, you talk about a spirit that likes to, you know, they say, this is my home, what they attach to. One of the most common EVPs I get is, get out.
Yeah.
You know, if it's your home, what are you going to tell people? Get out, you stupid paranormal investigators. You know? But yeah, all these scenes make for great stories in that. And I also saw, you know, I am a big fan of, and I tried to write my own kind of werewolf story once, but of the werewolf stories and that. We talk about dogmen in the kind of werewolf scenes and all that. But what got you writing like about the Canadian werewolf? What is all that about? Before we're going to go to commercial break in a few minutes, but I was just curious before we went to break.
I went to write a short story for an anthology called the Monster Within. And it was meant to be a look at the human behind the monster, Jekyll Hyde or whatever. It was only the look at the human. Yeah, that's what's so
beautiful about that story.
And so I was in New York for the very first time, and I thought, what would it be like if I was a werewolf and I lived in New York? Where would I go to run around as a wolf? This is like a different, like not, you know, you turn into an actual wolf. And so I just imagined a guy waking up naked in Battery Park with a bullet hole in his leg, the taste of human blood in his mouth, and he goes, what the hell did I do last night? And how the hell am I going to get home? Where am I going to find some clothes? And that was the premise for a short story. That became a novel. And then 4 years later, that started the series. I just released book 5 in that series. And it's dark humor about a guy living with the side effects that he turns into a wolf for 10 days every month. And he has no control over what happens. But he also has superpowers as a human, which he uses.
That's why I like the Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby.
What's that idea?
Hike it away. Yeah. You know,
he stays in New York, right? He doesn't. He doesn't leave much.
But it's the fact is, like, you're gonna wake up like, oh my god, what did my werewolf or Incredible Hulk just do? You know, I'm not responsible for any of that, even though it's the beast within. It's a fascinating idea that I've always loved too. Is that the idea of somebody that has this other side to them, but it's really them. You know. Oh, what was a good movie? I mean, there was so many, but the Jack Nicholson was probably one of my favorite werewolf movies.
I think Wolf, right? Was
Wolf,
that was
with him and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah,
and he was a publicist, wasn't he? Like for books, yes, I think so.
Oh, that's
funny. He was a publicist.
I have to watch that again. I haven't. I went back and I the only werewolf books I read, I went back to read before I started working on it, were Kelly Armstrong. She's a Canadian author. Bitten is a TV series based on some of her books. So Elena, the wolf, and I used kind of that kind of mythology, except he has no control over the change and he has no memory, except for these fleeting glimpses of things he may remember, but that's it. I wanted to keep them completely separate, like Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby in the original Hulk.
I read one. Somebody gave me a werewolf book series, and I didn't get to finish it, but I read one, and it's basically like a guy's midlife crisis, like having a wife and a kid and being a werewolf. Going through that. So what was it called? I can't remember. But what scared me more than about him being a werewolf was the whole midlife crisis, pending divorce, and not be able to pay my bills and job. Like the stress in the book wasn't the werewolf stuff. The stress in the book was the everyday life that's like really close to mine. You know, like it's like I was like a new parent. I'm like, it was too much anxiety, and it wasn't the werewolf part. It was the human part. It was anxiety. I thought the author did a brilliant job with that. Like he really put the anxiety of this guy's life on the table, and the werewolf stuff was just the fun part.
Well, the werewolf's the relief.
Yeah, it was. All right, we got to go to commercial break, or we're going to run out of time. We're going to go to commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking with author Mark Leslie, author of Haunted Hamilton, Tomes of Terror, Creepy Capitals, Haunted Hospitals, Macabre Montreal. We haven't got to yet. I kind of want to get into the 2 Macabre from Montreal stories, and when we come back after this short commercial break.
experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHN Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
House at 8%. So they're okay. So, does anybody want to play Parcheesi? Okay, who brought the dog?
to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID Jblandoo or Jblandparanormalsoup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is author Mark Leslie. He's written Haunted Hamilton, Spooky Sudbury, if I'm saying that right, Tomes of Terror about haunted libraries, Creepy Capital, Haunted Hospitals, Macabre Montreal, and Two Macabre for Montreal, which I want to get into. Is a lot of kind of true crime stuff, but I don't know about, we get into all the paranormal stuff, but I am a big fan of true crime stuff. I actually thought about doing a true crime podcast back in the day. Maybe one day I will. I don't know. It's hard enough just to get time to make sure I do this show, but I love true crime stuff. It's weird and unusual, usually, and the dark side of humanity. Like I said, I love talking about ghosts, and they can be scary, but people scare me more than ghosts. People truly can be crazy and scary, so that's why true crime can totally fascinate me. But if you got a good ghost story you think might chill us a little bit tonight, call into the show. Let me make sure the phone lines are open for you guys. They are open. Call in and join the conversation. If you got a spooky tale to tell Mark, maybe give him a good idea for a novel. I don't know. Or he might want to talk to you, especially if you're from the Canada, Ontario area, something along those lines. He's doing bars next. He got a haunted bar story. Like I said, I've talked about this on the show. I believe there's a lot of bars out there that are haunted, and usually by ghosts that are trying to leech onto other people that are drinking. You have that experience? I'd love to hear it. Anything. Call in, join the conversation tonight. But let's go ahead and get back to our guests. Thank you for keeping with us tonight, Mark.
Hey, I'm hanging in there, scared as I am.
Yeah, I saw it. Now I was reading up on your book on your website, and that you have the two macabre from you have macabre from Montreal, which I'm guessing is kind of the history and some ghost stories and all that.
Yeah,
right?
it's about probably 70% ghost stories. There's a few UFO stories, and then just some like unexplained. The Red Path sugar family. It's a type of sugar that's popular in Canada. There was major murders unsolved, but there were a few chapters that our developmental editor at the publisher said, these are too disturbing and we can't put them in there. And I said, but it's called Macabre Montreal, and he said,
right.
No, people are coming to these because they want a fun ghost story, right? They want fun ghost stories. These are too much, and so they were on the cutting room floor, and then Shayna, my co-author, and I thought, well, we got enough to put a little mini collection together, like it's 80, 90 pages, to Macabre from Montreal. So why not do that one for those who aren't shy of the more true crime-ish nature, because those are less paranormal and more, like you said, the nasty things people do to one another. And that was a fun way of people who want more can go get that little book for $5 in print. Or $2.99 ebook, or they start with the cheap one, and if they like the style of our writing, it's just going to be a little bit less macabre. It's going to be a little bit more fun. So that was I think it was a decent promotional opportunity, but it also allowed us, because we did a lot of research, and didn't want it to go missing. So that was a great way for us to. We self-published that one. But the Macabre Montreal was published by Dundurn, the publisher that's done most of my ghost story books, and so it was a great example of how you can kind of do both.
Yeah. No. Well, what are some of the two macabre stories you could get into tonight? We're not shy. It's late at night. Kiddies should be in bed. Mine are not, but kids should be in bed. So warning to the audience, maybe.
Two of them are related to one of the most horrific murders that have happened in Canada. And are you familiar with Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka?
That sounds familiar.
The Ken and Barbie killers. They were
yeah. Okay, yes.
So that happened not too far from where I am here in Waterloo, Ontario. And so they brutally murdered, raped, tortured, even Carla's sister. A number of young women, and it was believed Bernardo may have actually been the Scarborough rapist years earlier, who was never caught. And she ended up turning on him in the trial and providing evidence that helped them put him in jail for life. She ended up getting out of prison, starting a completely new life. And so the one chapter of this book was called
Yeah.
The Mommy Monster in Suburbia. And it was more of a look at the horrific things she had done. She'd created a new life, had a new husband, whatever. And this is a guy I think she had met while she was in jail, serving some of her time.
Yeah.
And it was more of a look at all of the victims she had been responsible for, including her children who were victims. But I think one of the things that had been disturbed, there was a Montreal newspaper reporter that had found she was volunteering at the kids' school. And it was kind of like, do you really want a volunteer who's...
Yeah, she should have never been out. She should have, but she made that plea deal and got out.
Before they found the evidence of the videotapes, she had agreed to do this, and so they had already given her all this whatever leeway for. But so it's a pretty disturbing chapter because we get into the details. Now, Paula Todd, who's a reporter, had gone and spent a day with her and her new family and researched it. So that was part of the research. There's a lot of reading, a lot of research. And then one of the other stories was Luca Magnotta, who ironically he basically chopped up this is like severed body parts sent in the mail. He was a huge fan. So he was from Montreal, and he was a huge fan of Karla Homolka. And so there was this connection that he had as an obsessive fan of her, as a serial killer.
Right.
And so we had the story about Luca Magnotta and his obsession with Karla and all the things he did. So again, that was one of the other stories. One of the other stories was from history, and it was more of an indigenous story about scalping and stuff. And the publisher didn't want to publish it because of sensitivities of and this is way before a lot of things came out in the last couple of years about burial grounds and stuff like that. And so they didn't want to go there, but it was an important element of Montreal's history to us because it was related to so much mythology that we wanted to include that. And then one of the other ones was just these riots in Montreal that had happened in the 50s that were pretty nasty and violent. And as I was studying them, it reminded me of what's it called? The one night, The Purge. It was kind of like
The Purge. I hate those movies.
Yeah, it was very, very Purge-like when you thought what was going down.
I'm not familiar with this. What happened in the 50s?
It was just
Montreal,
it was strike action. It had to do with buses, and there was just this. It was kind of like the unions and the mafia, and all of these things were going on in the background. They weren't related.
Boiling
to this.
pot.
But then this one night where it was just these crazy riots and people, beating other people practically to death, destroying stuff. And this is, when you think back in history to. In Canada, at least, that's not something that's happened a lot. Now, there's often riots after a Stanley Cup hockey game, but that's different.
Not like that. Not like the Purge.
Yeah,
that's why you said that.
Like
I never heard of that. I'm sure this is a history that people in Montreal don't want to talk about.
Yeah. But it was very much. It was like these really dark days in Montreal. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Charles Bronson style of New York, like just when you were reading the stories in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Because again, it was all old newspaper accounts that I was looking at for that, and I think some of them were W5, which is a show like 60 Minutes here in Canada.
Yeah.
And I remember watching an episode of that for doing research. So those were most of the stories, and we just didn't want them to go away because they were about Montreal and they were about some of the dark things that happened. And I was even experimenting. Does that mean I should be? And I don't. Like you said, the things that people do to one another are bad enough.
Right.
So going into true crimes, probably I'd rather stick to the fun.
I've thought about it. I've always been fascinated by true crime. I mean, I actually want to know a little bit more about the Jack the Ripper thing that you talked about, that alleyway, because I got really into Jeffrey Mudgett that we've had on it talk about. That's probably the closest I've gotten to true crime on here, is talking about the connection between H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper, that possibly H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper.
Right.
Where was that you? I'm interested that you said there was a Jack Ripper. Was it a similar murder to Jack Ripper at the same time?
Yeah, there
or?
were similar murders in Hamilton that sort of started, Hamilton, Ontario, that started shortly after Jack the Ripper disappeared and was never, there were no more murders. And there was a doctor who had moved, and there was certain names and stuff. And again, it was these allegations and the stories of the potential that maybe this was him. And so that's all. And again, it's unsolved, but it's an intriguing little tidbit, right? Everyone wants to claim Jack the Ripper. Yeah, he's in our town too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things that, these monsters, human monsters. This is why I've got, I am interested in true crime. I do enjoy true crime podcasts. It's a guilty pleasure. Because people scare me more than the supernatural. As much I've been levitated off my bed and thrown down and tried to be push my brink, and I still am more scared of people than I am of that.
Yeah.
Because people are very unpredictable and can be very crazy. They can seem very nice.
Yeah.
And next you know, they've chopping your body up into little pieces and putting them in bags, and nobody hears from you again.
That's true. That's true. Have you ever read Richard Lehman? He's a horror author.
It sounds familiar, but no, I don't.
There is one of his novels that starts off with Jack the Ripper in London, and is about this teenage boy that's hiding under the bed while the last murder is being committed.
Oh, Mary Kelly. Yeah.
When Mary Kelly's being murdered, and then he runs off, and Jack follows him and follows him back to America, and that's why he disappeared. But it's this.
Oh my God!
It is a really incredible, because Richard Lehman is just like all out horror. No character is safe. There's no sense of character preservation. It's novels, and they're nonstop gore fests. But yeah, that was one of his. I mean, I've read every single one of Lehman's novels, but that was always intriguing, because that made me interested in wanting to know more about Jack the Ripper. So, after
my wife has always been a little disturbed by my fascination with serial killers, and I don't want to glorify them. That's one of the reasons why I didn't want to do true crime, because I get in these like, God, I don't want to glorify these total monsters, but at the same time, I'm totally fascinated by human evil. Maybe it's because it's the complete opposite of me. I have complete empathy for people. I can't imagine what brings a person, and that's why I guess my imagination goes wild, what brings a person to do such horrible, dark, disturbing things. I watched American Horror Story. I just can't watch that show anymore. They did the hotel one, the hotel season. I think it was
I haven't
the last
gotten
season
to that
I saw.
season yet.
But I just hated, like, they had Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, as one of the ghosts that shows up at the hotel, because it was kind of based on the Stay at Maine hotel, the Cecil Hotel. Is what they kind of based a little bit of that show off of. And Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, stayed there while he was killing people.
Oh, wow.
And they kind of glamorized him in the show, and I'm just like, I'm not into this.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by Richard Ramirez. Like, I've read a lot about him, but I think he's an evil soul, an evil bastard. And I try to put empathy and try to understand people. That's why it fascinates me, because I can't empathize. I can't understand them. What makes a person turn to that much darkness and evil? Right. I mean, he was total, like, I believe in Satan all the way to the end,
Yeah.
By the way, you remind me a lot of Anton LaVey. When I see a picture, I'm like, am I interviewing Anton LaVey? It is because Satan is.
I have his Satanic Bible. I have a lot. Like, when I was doing the last two of the last books in the Canadian Werewolf series, I had these neo-Nazi bad guys, because I actually read the book Hitler's Monsters to learn about all of the paranormal stuff that was going on in the Third Reich. And so I extrapolated that there was an offshoot of followers who continued to do this to try to create super soldiers and superpowered.
And there's truth to that.
Guys. Yeah, so it was amazing. It's like an 800-page academic book, Hitler's Monsters. It took a lot to get through. But then I had to go and get all of these books on black magic and spells and the Satanic Bible and read through them to look for. I had to fictionalize my guys to have rituals that looked real but weren't real. So you
don't want to give people a guide to book, obviously.
Yeah, so I had to make stuff up but wanted it to be based on real spells and real incantations. So if somebody
Yeah.
read it, they go, "Oh yeah, that ruin or that thing or that, yeah, you use chicken bones and blood. That seems reasonable," even though I was making stuff up.
Yeah.
And so it was funny as these books were coming. Like my Amazon purchase history is just like really,
Right.
really scary what it was recommending me. But yeah, that's when I had never really known much about him. But I thought I've got to get the Satanic Bible so I can kind of check this out. And I see the picture. I'm like, well, that's why people say that about me.
Yeah, there you go. It does a lot. Like you just put the little like devil horn hat thing he would wear, like cape thing, and you'd be there. You'd have it.
Yeah.
You'd definitely win the Anton LaVey lookalike party. But that it's these monsters inside. Like I said, I grew up in LaPorte County and hearing about Belle Guinness. I mean, way before her time. And like I said, she would have been around for the World's Fair probably. I think there's proof that she went to it. That's when H.H. Holmes was doing his thing, and she would have been alive before she had ever been caught, and heard about what he did with his murder hotel. And then she started putting these advertisements out to have these guys come up, and then she'd chop up their bodies and that. It was a lot of profit motive there for her. But I mean, you don't kill that many guys and kill your children to fake your death without something very deep and dark and disturbed inside of you. It's true evil. True evil. And that's one of those unsolved mysteries like Jack the Ripper, because I mean, officially, like I said, she is dead, like was reported dead at that fire at her house. But there's plenty of evidence to show that was that was not her body. It didn't match the physicality of her body.
Right.
And the head was never found, I don't think. Yeah, the head's missing. So she basically threw a piano on top of the body of her children and the body that's supposed to be hers, but it was her stepdaughter's. These people, like especially ones that get away with it, like Jack the Ripper. Nowadays that's just becoming more and more unheard of. People think at least it's that way because we have all this forensics and we're under our own surveillance system as the way it is. So less people can get away with stuff, but I still think there's a lot of deep, dark wolves out there preying upon people. I mean, and we know it is. There's sex trafficking. There's a lot of dark and deep things happening under the veil of society and monsters that lurk. Like I said, these are the things that scare the heck out of me. I don't know if you ever read, what was his name? He was an FBI profiler. He was like one of the first. Journey into Darkness. John Russell.
John. No, yeah, I know who you mean.
Something
I sold
like that.
Tons of them as a book.
Not John Russell, but yeah. Journey into Darkness. I read that book, and that scared me more than any paranormal book I've ever read.
Yeah,
because it was his deep, dark dive into studying these sociopaths, these serial killers, and what they did and how they thought. And they made a good show on Netflix called was it Manhunt?
Manhunter or something.
Manhunter.
Like that.
Yeah, they had 2 seasons.
That, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was based on John Douglas.
John Douglas. That's right. Yeah.
And about it's kind of loosely based on his experiences of starting the FBI profiler program. And man, they covered one of the worst. Oh God, dang it! Now I can't think of his name. You see a serial killer movie like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, and these guys are huge dudes. Like they're big, monstrous dudes. They have supernatural powers. There was a guy, Ed Kemper, and Manhunt. Man, they really nailed the actor who played him.
Yeah.
Man, he really nailed Ed Kemper, right? Is it Kemper? I think it was Ed Kemper. Yeah. Huge guy, was like what, 6'5" or something like that. I mean, huge. And there's a scene in there where it's supposed to be like John Douglas or whatever. It's supposed to be his character or whatever. Where Ed Kemper gives him a hug and he ends up running away having a panic attack from it. I mean, and these Ed Kemper had like a lot of times serial killers don't have like the super Hannibal Lecter IQ. A lot of times they're like Ed Gein. They're not that smart, just delusional.
Right.
But some of them are smart, and Ed Kemper was one of them. He had like 120 IQ or something like that.
Yeah.
He actually did in jail. One of his careers he found was doing audiobooks, reading audiobooks, narrating audiobooks. There's Ed Kemper narrated audiobooks.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a guy who like made a hole. I think if I remember right, he made a hole in his mother's basement, like kind of like the pit in Silence of the Lambs, and put women in it and tortured them. Cut off his own mother's head and kept it in the refrigerator. I think did horrible things with it. Wow. Yeah, but then you could sit down and have this whole intellectual Hannibal Lecter kind of conversation with him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the darkness that men do. Yeah.
Yeah, the real monsters out there. Now, writing these books and getting into the ghost stuff. What is your like thought or belief? Have you experienced anything paranormal that you feel like? I mean, something that inspires you. Of course, is the stuff other people have, but for yourself,
Yeah.
doing all this, has anything paranormal reached out and touched you? Kind of.
So I used to be able to say no. No, it's just that, when I was a kid, I always thought, oh, is that Bigfoot, or is that a UFO, or is
Right.
that a ghost or whatever? And I was never able to experience any of that. But I actually had two things I can't explain. I'm not sure if it was a ghost or not. They both happened in hotels, ironically.
Yeah.
The first one was I was in Halifax, which is on the east coast of Canada. And I was there for a writers' conference, and I was at an old hotel that only later did I learn was
Right.
haunted, because I think I'd only done one book, Haunted Hamilton, by that time. And I got in, so it was like a weird flight where I, kind of was like early breakfast, but no lunch and stuff like that because of the flight. And I get in, so I get in my hotel room, and I check in early. They let me check in early, which is great. I get into the room, beautiful old hotel. I go and I plug my laptop in, so I could no power. I need to plug it in, and then I need to go to plug in my phone, and there's only the one cable available, or the one plug.
Yeah.
So I go to plug it in over by the nightstand, and when I go to plug the phone in, there's the base of the lamp has a little plug there that you can plug things into. So like, okay, I'll plug into the lamp, and I'm not getting any power on my phone. And I check the lamp, and of course there's no power to the lamp. And I look down and I see, oh, the plug is pulled out from the wall. Okay, no problem. The maid probably had to unplug it when she was vacuuming, whatever. Great, no problem. I plug it back into the wall, get my power, go on my laptop for a little bit, check some emails, find a local brewery, because that's what I do when I travel. I try to find a local brewery. And so I found a beer spot, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go. I got my phone charged up. I'm going to go down. I'm going to have a few beers because I'm meeting writers for dinner later on. And I always leave the light on in the hotel room because I'm scared.
You don't walk into a dark hotel room. I'm right there with you.
No, I always leave a light on. So when
Yeah.
I'm coming back to a lighted room, I'm sorry, I'm a big chicken. That's just the way life is.
I think it's just smart survival skills, but okay.
So I get back from my late afternoon lunch thingy that I'm doing. I come back, get into the room, and the light's not on. It's not dark, but it's darker.
Yeah,
It's
but
getting
that's still not
dusk.
good.
The light's not on. I'm like, oh, but there's a mint on my pillow. The actual mint on my pillow. Some
okay.
hotels do that. And I was like, oh, okay, they came and turned down my bed or whatever. And I look, and of course the lamp is unplugged again. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I am there in town. I go out with the writers. I come back to the hotel room. This time I think I'd left the bathroom light on instead of that lamp or whatever. No problem. No, I did leave that lamp on. And the bathroom light on in case the lamp went off.
Right.
That's what I was. So I get back, and I'm doing the breakfast keynote. So first thing in the morning, I'm on stage for an hour doing a talk. I'm nervous. I'm in a different time zone. So I not only set my alarm on my watch, I set my alarm on my phone, and I get the hotel is going to call me for a wake-up call because I'm nervous I'm going to sleep in. And I go, and I'm reading on my Kobo. It's like a Kindle ebook reader, a Canadian version. Plug the phone into the lamp, and I see, obviously because I had the lamp on.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. It's going to be all charged up, so that's going to go off. My wrist, not this one, but an old wristwatch is going to go off. I got 3 backups, but I wake up every hour or so because I'm afraid I slept in. Right, that's just the way I am sometimes, especially when I haven't gotten a lot of sleep. And so at one point, I wake up to check to see what time it is, and I can't, like, it's the old-fashioned watch that the light doesn't work very well. So I lean over to press the button on my iPhone so I could see the time, and I look at the time. It's like 3:30. I'm like, oh, I got like 2 more hours or whatever before I need to get up. But I look at my phone, which has been plugged in since I went to bed at 11 o'clock, and it's at like 10%. battery power. And that's when I laid there and I went, okay. And I grabbed the phone and I leaned over the bed and I used the phone as a light just to see. And I look and I see that it's been unplugged again. Now this is a plug that was not it wasn't loose. It was actually a good solid. So it's not like physics wise.
You have to stick it in.
Yeah, I had to really push it in there. And I'm thinking two weird things came to my mind. A giant rat pulling on it, or a mischievous maid that snuck into my room, crawled around on the floor and unplugged it because they just thinks it's funny. I don't know what it was. Those are the two first things.
I'm thinking of the maid from Family Guy, which is Peter. It's like, you let me, you want me to watch? You want me to watch?
Yeah, that kind of thing. But I decided, I got it in my head after these two bizarre things came, that something didn't want that plugged in.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, I'm not going to plug anything into that plug anymore. Something doesn't want it. It's an omen, so whatever.
I would have plugged it back in, though, because I'm that kind of jerk to go.
No,
Let's see you do it again, buddy.
I'm going to get along. I never even thought that. I'm a Canadian, so I never even thought, well, maybe I should change rooms. I never even thought of that. The next night, I couldn't get to sleep until I went back down to the bar and just drank my face off, and I passed out on the bed with my clothes on. And I didn't wake up until sunlight, and I was fine. But that was the first thing that happened, but I couldn't figure out what it was. Something didn't want that plugged in, so I just kind of went with it. The other time was with my partner Liz, and it was several years later. Now, I had just released Haunted Hospitals with Rhonda Parrish, so I wrote half the book, she wrote the other half. I was to go down to Romance Writers of America as a book industry rep. I was going down there to meet with the writers, and it was in Miami. And Orlando, Florida. And we drove from Ontario, which is quite the hike to drive down there. So we took 4 days to go down, and we ended up picking haunted bars that we wanted to visit along the way.
Exactly.
And so we spent 4 days getting down there. It was kind of fun. But on the way back, we were looking to say, well, we wanted to stay just one night, like do a really long day one night, and then we'll go. And then I found, oh my God, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia is about a halfway point. And I didn't write about that chapter. Rhonda did. So all I knew was like the proofreading I did on her chapter. So I didn't know the in-depth stuff. And I went, oh my God, we can go on a historic tour of the criminally insane and all this stuff. It'll be fun. You know, if we drive and we get in there really, really late, we stay there, we do the tour first thing in the morning, and then we'll get home probably midnight the next day. Great. So we're driving through the Virginia mountains. It's after midnight. It's foggy, and I'm anticipating going to this place. I'm already scared. So Liz is driving. We get to the first hotel. The parking lot is full. I run in, and I said, "Do you have any rooms?" No, nothing. There's an Econo Lodge just down the highway. So we get back in the car and we go. We get to the Econo Lodge down the highway. Parking lot's full. I run in, and she says, well, yeah, we have one room. And she says, well, there's no king or queen size beds. There's just two doubles. And I was like, hey, who cares? We just want to go to sleep. We want to get up. We want to do a tour. Great. Let's go. Check in. And on our way down in a different Econo Lodge in a different town in Virginia, it was a pretty scary place. It was a place where we actually moved the furniture in front, like there's a couch we moved in front of the door. We slept on top of the sheets.
Yep.
It was one of those kind of places.
I had that experience recently. Cheap. Yeah, I had one of those. I'll tell you.
This room was much nicer, but it was obviously the same layout, and it's in the same state. And so I've got that in my head. And I'm a scared person to begin with. Now, Liz takes the bed beside the door, or beside the bathroom. I take the one closest to the door. I double check, the door is locked and everything, and go to bed. But we're fine. She falls asleep right away. She takes her hoodie, puts it over her head, rolls over. She's out in like 30 seconds. She can always do that. Me, I'm looking for the monsters in the room. It takes me hours to fall asleep often. So I wake up in the middle of the night. I hear her, and I look, and I see just on the end of my bed to her bed, I see her shuffling. I can hear her shuffling. I see her moving towards the washroom. And I'm waiting for her to turn the light on in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And she never turns the light on. I'm laying there going, what the hell? And then I hear her breathing in the bed beside me.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh my God, there's a woman in the room. And I sat up and I was freaked out because I'm like, oh my God, someone broke in. They're snooping in the dark. That's why she didn't turn on the light. And I checked my passport's still there at the end of the table. My laptop's there. The chain's still on the door. And I'm like, Mark, you idiot. You're going to see a haunted place. You have a wild imagination on the best of days. Here's what happened, I told myself. I was laying there. I saw Liz go to the bathroom. I fell asleep for 5 minutes, and I thought a second had passed. That's what happened. I fell asleep before she got to the washroom.
Right.
I opened my eyes, and I thought, yeah, and that happens all the time, right? Made sense. It's the only way I convince myself to go back to sleep. Later on in the night, I wake up, and I hear this sort of, on the where my passport is.
Oh,
again, because we're in the States and we're Canadian, so you can't get back home without your passport. And I sat up again. I'm like, oh my God, there's someone in the room. And again, I scan, I'm looking around, and I was like, no, the chain's still on the door. There's no one there. Liz is still sleeping in the bed there. And, oh, maybe there's another door, like, some connecting rooms. No, nothing. So that took me forever to fall asleep. So the next morning, nothing else happened. Next morning, I get up. And we're getting ready and we're getting showered and stuff like that. And we're doing stuff and packing. And I said, so did you get up at all last night? And I said, no. I said, you sure you didn't go up to the washroom? She said, no, I put the hoodie over my head. I went to bed. That was it. I was out like a light. I didn't get out of bed once. And I said, well, interesting that you say that, because here's what happened to me. And I shared the story to her. And her face went white as a ghost. Now, one thing you need to know about Liz is I'm a true believer. She's not. She wants to see a ghost. I don't. I'm going to go on these tours. I'm scared, right? So she is very, very skeptical. She doesn't believe, but she's very intrigued and curious, and she really wants to see stuff. So she's right up front wanting to, and I'm hiding in the crowd, right, when we're on a ghost hunt. I'm hiding where all the lights are, probably. So her face, I've never seen her face go so pale. And she said, well, I didn't get out of bed last night, but here's something that happened to me. She's laying in bed. She wakes up and feels like someone is standing over her. And she said, it didn't feel like it was you. And then I felt a hand touch my shoulder. And it definitely wasn't your hand. It was a woman's hand touching my shoulder. Now, Liz, unlike me, I'm a chicken. I would have wet myself or done worse. Screamed like, Ned Flanders or Homer Simpson and asked for Liz to save me. Liz is very feisty, so she gets her fists. She's ready. Someone's in the room.
Yeah.
She's going to attack. She swings around. There's nobody there. And that freaked her out. That's all that happened to her that night. But she said, I was convinced there was a woman standing over me and touched me.
Oh,
and
geez.
I was like, I was convinced I saw and heard a woman walking around your side of the bed. And we were just kind of like, what the hell? I went to talk to the desk clerk to find out, like, has anyone seen anything in this room? I went online. I tried to do research. I couldn't find.
It's really hard.
But we didn't feel scared. We actually said goodbye to her. We felt like she was there. She knew we were there. Seemed to want to interact. And that was it. It was kind of a creepy, freaky feeling.
Yeah.
But then it was also when we left, we felt like we should say goodbye to her. We should respect and acknowledge that she's there. And that was it. So again, I can't explain it. We believe that there was a woman who's stuck in that room.
I would imagine like what it is like to be a ghost trapped in a bar, a ghost trapped in a hotel room.
Yeah.
I don't think they're there because they like, oh, this is my favorite hotel room in the world. I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
They got trapped there somehow. And that would be kind of crappy, but at least you meet new people. Maybe.
Yeah.
If they don't fart in their sleep. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully.
Me and my kids even agreed on this. Like the scariest part of our trip down to Florida this year wasn't the St. Augustine tour. You know, they had so much fun on that. Scariest part of our trip was when Dad decided last minute to go on this tour and go down to St. Augustine, because we were a couple hours away from St. Augustine where we were staying, so we needed to get a place to stay there the night.
Right.
I quickly went and looked for a hotel, and it was Travelocity gave me like the first listing of this hotel. It was like the cheapest. This is best bargain. Okay, I'll get that. Oh my God. So we get there, and I knew I was in trouble because we're waiting in the lobby, and there's already 3 different people ahead of me wanting different rooms because their rooms are so crappy. Like, oh man, I really probably screwed this up. I knew I was in trouble. And it used to be like a Hampton Inn or something like that. I can't remember. It was like, or it used to be one of these brand hotels that some other people bought and were running it out.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And so we get our room, and as soon as we open the door, my 10-year-old son Dean goes, "It smells like death in here." I'm like,
great.
You're not wrong, kiddo. Nobody put your stuff on anything. Don't touch anything. Literally, it smelled awful. The room was like, you've ever watched the show Supernatural? My son's named Dino, if you can tell. I'm a fan if you know the show. It looked like one of their dive hotel rooms they stayed in the show, you know, like really bad, real bad. Like, I'm like, don't, I'm like, this is bedbug heaven. Like, we're not staying here. We're not staying here. And we spent the next 10, 15 minutes trying to, like, you know, find another hotel room. And we're like, boom, got one, we're gone. Went back in there and said, here, you know what? They're like, well, they're trying to argue with me about the deposit and all that. I'm like, you know what? I'll consider it a life lesson. You just take the deposit and shove it up your ass. And I'm just going to go. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye, because that was ridiculously bad. I mean, it smelled like death. That room was probably haunted. And it was not only that, it just had a bad vibe all around. Like, nobody was going to be sleeping that night. I was like, there's no point staying here, because nobody's going to be sleeping here tonight. I'm not going to be able to, I mean, I wouldn't even want to even touch the bed, you know. So, yeah, that was our scary story from our Florida trip this last year. You know, more scary than our haunted tours. The hotel rooms, I you know, being a paranormal investigator, you know, word gets around in my hometown about me, you know, doing this show and being an investigator. I had this one guy I barely knew. I used to be in the band scene, used to play in bands and all that. I had this one guy I barely knew track me down through other friends, like in the middle of the night calls me because, or it was in the early morning. He would have called me in the middle of the night if he'd gotten my phone number, but he got it early in the morning. Calls me. He was working with some kind of like road crew that travels. I forgot what they were doing, construction or whatever. And these guys would get paid for a hotel room, and like be 4 guys staying in one room, 2 double beds. They have to bunk and everything. And he calls me early in the morning. He goes, "You remember me?" I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of remember you." I'm like, "Why are you calling me?" You know? And he's like, "Oh my God." And I can hear the other guys talking in the background, all of them wanting to tell their stories. They had such an incredible night of craziness. None of them had slept. They'd been up all night. And he was trying to get a hold of me all night because he's like, "I knew this one guy. He might have answers to what's going on here." They had stuff flying in the room, a voice telling them to get out. One of the guys actually saw an apparition. This is a small hotel room down in Kentucky. And it was so crazy. All these guys I could hear it was real because all these guys are talking over each other in the background, scared to death. And they're like, "We're supposed to be back here tonight. I'll let you know." I never heard back from them. I'm guessing they just said screw it and paid for their own rooms somewhere else. Yeah. But yeah, hotels are a scary thing. You never know, you know, what's happened in that room before. You hear the horror stories of like people, like somebody hiding a body under the bed in a hotel. You know, it's just like there's creepy things, man. Creepy things in hotel rooms. Let alone the you know, like the non-paranormal things like bed bugs and all other kinds of things I don't like about hotels. We got a nice. I think we went to Hampton. I can't remember where we went. We got a really nice hotel. And it was my 6-year-old's first time in a hotel too. So when he went to that room, I'm like, "It's generally not like this, kid." And we get to this new one. He's like, "This is nice." I'm like, yeah. You got a comparison of what's really bad, and now you got a nice what's really good.
There you go.
just cost your dad some money.
Well, one time Liz and I were, when we were in Ottawa, I lived there for a long time, but living in Waterloo now. We went to Ottawa to do some of the ghost tours and stuff like that, research when I was writing Creepy Capital. So Ottawa is Canada's capital city.
Yeah.
And it has one of the most haunted buildings in Canada is the old Carleton Jail. And this is jail spelled with a G, you know, that old Gael kind of spelling. And it's a hostel now where for $30 a night you can stay in this hostel. And you can actually stay in old converted cells that used to be jail cells.
Oh, it just sounds lovely.
And so Liz and I are on, it's called the Ghosts in the Gallows tour of downtown Ottawa. And we're going, part of the tour is through there. And they're telling stories about just bizarre stuff. There's the faceless woman on the 4th floor in the washroom who people see her in the mirror looking over their shoulder when they're there. There's the screams and the howls that they can hear from coming from the, what used to be death row. And then there's the priest, the ghost priest that would show up sometimes and sit on your bed in the middle of the night.
Great.
And so Liz is hearing these stories and she goes, "Oh my God, we can stay here." And I'm like, "No,
I like her already.
I'll be at the Novotel across the street with all the lights on. You can stay here."
I've been all with Liz though. I'm
Yeah, you would be right there. Yeah. I refused to. I was just too scared. I couldn't do it.
See, I have kids now. I go on vacation, so I can't do those kind of things because I don't want to freak them out or traumatize them. But like my younger days, I would have been all over that to stay in a hotel like that. Or hostels, you mean a horror series at a hostel? That just seems like a bad idea.
Oh yeah. Well, when we went back to Ottawa, no, this was actually still for research for Creepy Capital. We did a couple trips, right? Because it's a 6-hour drive from where we live. And we stayed at the Chateau Laurier. Now, the Chateau Laurier is allegedly haunted. So the Chateau Laurier, the connection of the Chateau Laurier to the Titanic was that the owner of this prestigious luxury hotel in downtown Ottawa, right across from the Parliament buildings, right across the canal from the Parliament buildings, he was in London and he was coming back to Canada on the maiden voyage of the Titanic. And he never made it. He actually gave up his seat for his wife and daughter, and he died. And he's allegedly one of the ghosts who came back to haunt the building. And so when Liz and I stayed there, I was actually brave enough because she wanted to wander around at 3 a.m, all of the hallways, looking to see if we could find something. And we couldn't, thank God, find anything. But there were some stories of the shadow. So that was the closest I ever came to staying in a place that I knew was haunted. But fortunately I didn't see anything. But it was such a luxury hotel that I got over the right. It wasn't a creepy place. It was a gorgeous old beautiful place with a stately room. And I was like, this is a tax write-off because I'm researching for the
it's research. Yeah, see, me and my wife always dreamed of our bucket list haunted tour, haunted hotels. Like we want to stay in. Like you could make a whole vacation trip across the U.S. of haunted hotels because there's a ton of them. It's definitely its own archetype of haunting is the haunted hotel. I mean, a lot of people come and go, and sometimes famous people. You hear about in San Francisco. I'm trying to remember the name of the hotel. Like you get like Marilyn Monroe and. Other people that appear like, Marilyn Monroe in a mirror, I think there, and you wonder, like, I even remember people saying that we have a place called the Civic's, not a hotel. It's like a center, but Bob Hope would play there. And some people had thought they'd seen Bob Hope. It's like, well, I don't think Bob Hope would stay here, but are they impressions of famous people or whatever?
Right. An impressionist. Yeah,
an impressionist, spirit impersonator. But the hotels are just fascinating. I mean, I guess it also goes back to one of my favorite novels was The Shining. When I was a kid, I read that book a bunch of times.
Right.
I don't know how many times I've read The Shining. I just love the idea of the Overlook Hotel. This place. Yeah. That has these ghosts. I was, talk about movies or scenes that scared the crap out of me. When I was a little kid, I saw that shower or the bathroom scene where Jack Nicholson goes in and there's a naked woman. And my mom, I remember we had gotten HBO. And it was like a treat. Like my mom's like, okay, we got HBO. I think I don't know. We had for limited time, or whatever. I'm like, what movie's going to be on tonight? We can watch a movie. And of course, it was The Shining. Mom was like, no. And I begged her and begged her and begged her, and she said, you're going to have nightmares. I'm like, it's the movie that's on. We just got this. You said we could watch a movie. And I've had these arguments now as a parent. I understand what I put my mom through. But she let me, just like I've done with my children, regretted it. And yeah, she regretted it because we watched that movie and I was pretty cool through it. And I was fascinated by the haunted hotel and Danny and The Shining and all that. And when it got to the scene with Jack and the woman, it scared the crap out of me. He kisses her and she turns into a totally hag. And I remember just creeping the crap out of me. And it was like, I don't know how long after, because I was just a little kid. My mom, I was in the bathtub. And my mom's like doing something cosmetic, like putting some facial cream on or whatever. And she turns to me. For some reason, it does like the images of The Shining and this hag woman came. Sorry, Mom, you didn't look like a hag. It was just the facial cream. Came into my mind. And I just started screaming and bawling my head off. Yeah, yeah. I've done that. I mean, I remember my son staying up one late night too, like, and we were watching something, and The Shining came on, and he's like, "I want to watch it." I'm like, "You said you got to watch it." I'm like, "Fine, you're gonna fall asleep." I woke up, and it was like 2 a.m. It was the end. The movie was ending, and there he is, just like sitting up in bed, staring at it. I'm like, "Oh, I failed."
Oh no. Yeah.
I failed. You know, like he's gonna be screaming, having nightmares. Yeah, he doesn't like scary movies. I got a 6-year-old that's probably gonna be a horror fan and loves anything scary, and I have to argue with him all the time. Like, no, you're not ready for this. You're not watching this.
Yeah.
And he wants to watch anything scary horror wise. It's like some people like us, you know, we're fascinated by the darkness and the terror and the fear, what hides under the bed. And then there's other people that are like, I don't want, nothing to do with that.
Yeah, not going there. Yeah, it's funny because I'm scared of it, but I'm so attracted to want to write about it, to want to talk about it, which is kind of interesting. I don't know what where that juxtaposition comes from, because I did actually Sephora Giron, who's a horror author, a friend of mine, and we were at Eerie Con in Niagara Falls, New York, and we were allegedly we were staying at a hotel. It's a Holiday Inn where the conference was, and allegedly Amanda, who's a girl who apparently died in a fire on the lot where the building was, is supposed to be haunting the building.
Yeah.
And so Sephora and I did go and explore, and she had one of the little electro readers, one of the basic simple ones that was supposed to show you something, and we were calling out for Angela, and I was praying to God that we didn't see anything or hear anything. And we did that for a couple hours from like midnight till 2 a.m. or whatever, and didn't see anything, just scared each other silly. And we didn't see anything in the middle of the night, but we were on a panel together in the basement area where some of the rooms were. And while we were on the panel talking, she had it on the desk between us, and we were just like in the middle of an animated discussion, and we both looked at it, and the lights were just going crazy. And we're like, oh, thank God this is daylight. Thank God there's a room full of people here. So, but again,
yeah,
I don't know how that works, so I don't really understand what that
Well,
is.
with something like that, if you got electronics around, or anybody's got a cell phone, and if it's catching a Wi-Fi signal and something that comes in, or on their data signal, it will trigger it.
And
so
that's
if you get
the
a
thing, right?
text or something like that, as an investigator, we go on. If we got cell phones, it's turn them off.
Turn them off, so you're not getting the
or put it on
interference.
airplane
Right.
mode. Yeah. Even in airplane mode, though, you can still get some kind of signal. That's why you get all the ghost hunting shows and stuff like that. Kind of drive me nuts sometimes, because it's like
You got all
all
the
these
cameras.
scenes. Yeah. But all these scenes can be explainable half the time you see in the shows. I've been, I'm not an expert, but I've been, doing it for a while. I know a little bit about it, and the shows drive me nuts. But I love the shows that really show the history just as much as I love the books that really get into the history of hauntings. Because the two are really tied together. What you're dealing with,
100%.
you have to look into the history of it. What are your future projects? You said you're working on haunted bars. What else are you got going
so
on?
Spirits
down the pipeline?
Untapped has been a work in progress. Lots of stories there. I'm working on Weird Waterloo. So I live in the Waterloo, Ontario region, greater city of Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. And so I'm doing some research for that. And then I also have one on haunted objects that's called, Screaming Skulls.
Really?
Haunted Dolls, whatever.
Ooh.
And again, that's based on, haunted objects, not necessarily haunted. And I think I wanted to write that when I was working on Creepy Capital. There was a story about these haunted dolls at the museum right beside the Chateau Laurier near the Parliament buildings.
Yeah.
That there were stories of these haunted dolls that were in that one section of the museum that would freak people out. And so that there's like, oh, I should write about haunted dolls and stuff. But
it's popular on eBay. People sell them all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, geez. I mean, but there are such things as the real haunted dolls. There's the famous Robert doll that they have. Annabelle. They made a whole franchise out of. There is something about the what is it? What do you call it? A figmity or something? Representation of a person and a doll and a spirit attaches to it that I think creeps a lot of people out. The psyche, or maybe it's just they've seen Chucky too many times. I don't know, but
I don't know what it is. But just dolls that don't do anything
Yeah, just stares at you.
But cause things to happen. So I've just been fascinated by the concept of haunted objects, and so that's one of the ones. So I've got a bunch of these sort of in the works, and then it's sort of a combination of, is there a publisher interested in them? Is it something I'm going to publish myself? So there's always these choices and options to make along the way. But I think Weird Waterloo, I met someone for drinks the other night, and she's lived here her entire life. And when we started talking about them, she's just digging in. She's like, "Oh my God, I've got stories about here, and I got stories about there, and I got." And so I was like, "Well, maybe this is a co-authored one. Maybe this is one we work on together because she's got lots of great stories, and maybe that's my motivation to actually finally get this one done."
Now, you mentioned one thing in one of your books. You had some stuff on, I think it was the Montreal thing about aliens. You ever going to get into the alien aspect of the paranormal?
You know what? It was Sudbury. So spooky Sudbury. And Montreal did have some UFOs, but so Sudbury, Ontario is the mining capital of the world, nickel capital of the world, I should say. And I grew up there. And it's about a 4-hour drive north of Toronto. And there is a story of the haunted level 2650. Level of Levack mine. Levack is the town I grew up in of 2,000 people. But so when Jenny Jelen and I wrote Spooky Sudbury, and again we cut the book in half, and one of the things I hadn't accounted for was she was a journalist, so she wrote newspaper articles all the time. But when we took like half the stories she was going to do and half the stories I was going to do, I didn't realize her half was going to be less than half, because newspaper journalists are usually writing 500, 800 word articles.
Right.
I needed 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 word chapters. And so we didn't have what we had pitched to the publisher. I was still like 20,000 words short. And so I got into the UFOs, and there was supposed to be a single chapter on UFOs. I ended up writing 4 full chapters on UFOs.
Oh, wow.
I did the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and beyond, because there were so many stories. So one of the theories about UFOs in Sudbury is that potentially the aliens may be attracted to the rich nickel deposits. So the reason that the Sudbury Basin is a plethora of nickel is, in ancient times, a meteorite hit Sudbury, and the Sudbury Basin is a giant meteor crater, and so there's deposits of nickel everywhere. It's just crazy, and so there's a belief that potentially that's attracting them. But one of the most intriguing stories, and it was like I spent hours and hours and hours in the library and microfiche, pulling newspaper articles about so many UFO reportings and sightings. But one of the ones was in the 70s, and I was alive for this, and I actually kind of remember a little bit about this. Was over the Creighton mine near Sudbury, there were 3 unidentified objects that were reported by 2 different police branches in the area, like Ontario Provincial Police and the Sudbury Regional Police independently. Plus, they were seen on a radar, and it was such a concern that from the Colorado Air Force Base, that the United States Air Force sent 3 fighter pilots up to Canada because they thought there were Russians trying to come in.
It was probably a NORAD alert.
Yeah. And the documentation of what they saw is all blacked out.
Of course.
And again, there's like, and so it was kind of like they actually sent 3 fighter pilots to intercept these unidentified flying objects that have still never been identified. What did they see? What was that over the skies in Sudbury? But there's so many stories of aliens that almost like a third of the book became about UFOs.
Once you go down that rabbit hole, you start finding a lot. Now, we usually go to our last commercial break and have another half hour. Are you sticking around, or are you still good to go?
I am, if you want. Yeah.
All right. We're going to go to our last commercial break, and when we come back, hey, guys, the phone lines are open. You want to call in, share your spooky stories with Mark Leslie tonight. He loves them. Scare him with some good spooky stories. tonight. Come on, guys. We got a half an hour left after this commercial break. Call in, join the conversation, but we will be right back.
Intercepted the transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it. But to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all. But he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Heat 'em up.
Do,
Ray. Egon.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID Jblandoo or Jblandparanormalsoup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight, our guest has been Mark Leslie. He's the author of Haunted Hamilton, Spooky Sudbury, Homes of Terror, Creepy Capital, Haunted Hospitals, Macabre Montreal, and Two Macabre for Montreal, plus a number of fiction books, including the Canadian Werewolf series. Call in. Nobody's calling tonight. It's been a while since I've not had a caller. I know Zach is one of my regular calls. I wanted to say condolences to him and his family for losing, I think it was his mother-in-law. Prayers are with you and your family, Zach. Zach's not calling in, so you got lines open, guys. Call in. I know there's others. It's late. But I'd like to hear spooky stories tonight. I think Mark would, too. He seems like a guy that enjoys it. Maybe a little scared by it. That's the thing. It's kind of a hate-love thing. You enjoy it, but it scares the crap out of you, right? But it's what draws you in, the darkness. That's what, for me, the true crime thing. Like I said, the scary, spooky stories only makes my imagination go wild. I don't get totally really scared by them. A little bit sometimes. The haunted asylum one scared me tonight that he told. But the true crime stuff, that scares the crap out of me because it's what people can do. It's all about spooky scary tonight, guys. Call in and join the conversation. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. Thanks for hanging in there with me, Mark.
Scared as can be, but I'm still here.
I was wondering, I was thinking about it during the commercial break. You write the werewolf series, and it was not long ago we had another cryptoid, like this kind of fox-like werewolf creature caught in Texas. But you've seen that, and everybody's been talking about that, still talking about that. Yeah. And I've always been fascinated. I've been fascinated by the idea of werewolves ever since I was a little kid. I just love it. The Howling movies and American Werewolf in London. And it's another one of those aspects of like people. Bigfoot's a cryptoid that people talk about as probably the most famous one. But the Dogman thing got my interest a long time ago because I'm like, is it, and of course, Dogman experts are like, it's not a werewolf. But to me, it's very similar.
Yeah.
I've had calls like Tyler who had an experience with the Wisconsin one. We've had we had Linda Godfrey on here, who's an expert on that. She kind of grew up on that, and I can't think of the name of the one. It's Beast of Bray Road.
Okay. Yeah.
That one. We've had people that witness these things, and I've always wondered, I can't imagine it's a cryptid just like Bigfoot hiding out in the woods. This sounds like somebody's waking up naked in the woods later. That's what I keep thinking. It's like a changeling. Have you gotten interested in looking into the Dogmen kind of sightings and stuff?
Yeah,
people have?
I've started to do a bit of research. It's difficult because I'm writing this fiction. I want to base it on real legends and stuff like that.
I kind of got into like a werewolf story that was one of those stories I almost finished a novel of, but then I hated it. But I got really into the researching a lot of this stuff for the kind of the dogman sightings and that. What would be a real life werewolf?
Yeah, that would be intriguing to see. So one of the things that I played with is the reason that Michael Andrews is so. The first book was called A Canadian Werewolf in New York, which was meant to be a nod to an American werewolf in London, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's going to
totally.
should be some humor in that.
Shenanigans.
And I played with the idea that the reason he has no conscious awareness of it being a wolf is that he blocks it from his mind because, like childbirth, the pain of childbirth that women
Yeah.
have to go through is just so incomprehensible that they expand and like this
Yeah.
child comes out that if he were to experience it and remember what it was like, it would probably drive him insane. And so that's one of the motifs I've played with is the idea. Because imagine the guy's a 6 foot man who morphs into a 6 foot wolf, but in a
Yeah.
completely different facial structure and bone structure and all the things. You're thinking, okay, how does that work? Because I'm still trying to deal with physics here. What does that do to a person?
I rate like the werewolf I think one of the best werewolf transitions I've ever seen, and it wasn't in a movie, it was in a TV show, was Hemlock Grove. It was based off of one novel, and then they turned it into a series. And the first season was awesome, and then it just went downhill. It's like because the first season was based off a novel. After that, he never made a second novel, and the writers started just writing scripts, and it just went horrible.
Right.
But the first season was awesome, and in that the werewolf it's a bloodline thing of gypsies. He's a gypsy,
Right.
and his grandfather was a werewolf. He has it, and like he turns into like a wolf, and it is it's beautiful and disgusting at the same time. Like
I'm
one
gonna
of
have
the
to go
best
watch
werewolf.
those.
Yeah. Check out because basically the wolf comes through his skin, like it rips him
I
apart.
think I might have seen that. Yeah.
And then it eats it. Just
he's got to get it back in, right?
Yeah. Well, what was so great about Hemlock Grove? He used a lot of old traditions and folklore of werewolves and vampires because it was like almost like a buddy movie or a TV show, like between this one kid who's a werewolf and one kid who's a vampire. And the vampire was really cool because they never come out and say vampire.
Oh, okay.
They used a lot of the old like traditions, like the vampire to be created had to commit suicide. And his mother, who's a vampire, like basically manipulates him into killing himself so he would become like her.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great show. I probably gave away too much there. But what I loved about it was all the different things that like related to old myths and traditions. Like the baby, the kid that was the vampire when he was born had the what do you call it? It's the same thing they talk about in The Shining too. Is the skin over the face from the mom?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking like.
Yep.
They put in all this different lore around werewolf and vampires into the characters and the mythology. Which was really cool. How much do you like, when you do research, do you like the modern kind of tales of vampires, werewolves kind of deal, or do you like the old kind of traditional lores that are really to some people kind of goofy, but to me, I love it.
I like going back as far as I can because when you look at different cultures of the same mythology from different cultures and you look for the commonalities, and it's kind of like researching ghosts. It's very, very similar. And I've got so many books on paranormal and stuff. Like I go to used bookstore and I'm like, oh, another encyclopedia or whatever of the unexplained. Okay, I'll buy that too. And the shelves just on the stand-up desk in front of me are just packed with nonfiction. I just bought another 8.
The shelves behind my setup here, I got bookshelves all over my basement of this stuff.
And they're all marked up, right? They're highlights, and little sticky notes. Especially when I'm working on a particular book, I can quickly go and. I do a lot of internet research, but nothing beats got the book in hand and
exactly
highlighting a passage and stuff like that. So I do a lot of that, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and I do like to dig into the history. Because it's almost like these layers. Every time you go back, you find another additional layer of, that's where that comes from. That's why garlic has this effect.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I find like what I'm interested in, like I talk about this a lot, is our new folklore is being built up, like the black-eyed children. And I thought about this again recently. I've never seen the Black-Eyed Kids and the stories behind that. These children come knocking on your door and they're wearing a hoodie and they're just like, can I come in? I need help. Or they're acting like they need help, and the person just feels like they're in a daze, like they're almost going to let them in, but then they don't. And then they see the kid's eyes and they're totally black.
But it almost, is it like a werewolf? Not a werewolf,
or
but
more like a vampire.
Yeah,
because it's like, let me in. My kid, speaking about being a bad dad, my kids the other night, we were up late and we were trying to find a movie, and neither one of them would agree on a movie. Of course, the one movie they see in the list they agree on is like, what's this? Let me in. I'm like, it's not appropriate, not appropriate. No. And it was about an hour arguing. We're running out of time, and I finally gave in. And because that's my sons, especially my youngest, a 6-year-old, I let watch. And it's fascinated by the idea. But look at the lore. We were talking about the lore of vampires and throughout the movie and stuff like that. And they're like, why does she have to ask to let me in? What's that about? And I was like, that goes back to old lore. Like it's almost like a vampire is more like a spirit than a physical thing that you have to invite into your home. But the Black-Eyed Kids, this new mythology, it's like the same. If you look into it, it's like the same mythos.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, like I said, me and you both have imaginations. I get into this stuff. I think back, I'm like, well, what if what people are experiencing with the Black-Eyed Children, just a representation of the same mythos, but it's something real, something they're encountering. I don't know what it is, but this is what people encountered back in the day, and they called it a vampire. And that's where this came from.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because of, oh man, that's just freaky. When I think about, the Black-Eyed Kids, I'm gonna have to read. That just kind of freaks me out to no end.
They kind of, if you read the stories that people have encounters with the Black-Eyed Children, it is very vampire-like in the sense, how a vampire would kind of like mesmerize you and transfix you. They all feel like they're being almost mesmerized by these children to let them in.
You don't know. You don't realize you're kind of not.
You never hear what happens when you let them in, because the people that let them in don't live to tell the tale. I don't know. It's always the ones that said nope and shut the door.
I remember watching on television when I was a kid. I was able to stay up to watch Salem's Lot.
Oh, that's so good.
And there's
the original TV.
Yeah, the original TV series where the little boy's friend is hovering outside the window.
I knew exactly right away what scene you're going to go to. Yes,
exactly. Still, that was like nightmares thinking about that.
It was it was made for TV.
Yeah.
Right? Wasn't it originally? It wasn't a movie theater thing. It was made for TV. Stephen King's Salem's Lot.
David Soul from Starsky and Hutch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Salem's Lot's a great novel, by the way, for people. I mean, I love Stephen King. Not as a person, but as a writer. I was up in New Hampshire, and the people there, it's like in this town, North Conway. They're like, yeah, he's been down here. He's a real jerk. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't learn about your heroes. But Salem's Lot, that miniseries where that kid is doing that, that's what I think of the Black-Eyed Children. That was some stuff that cinematically that has been done back in the day. Really knew how to terrify you, and like nowadays, everything they got to show you everything. And I always think some of the best cinema is what they don't show you.
But they don't show you. So they played off. Work. They riffed off Nosferatu. So they riffed off, not ripped off, but riffed off Nosferatu so well. And I still remember seeing the old black and white shadow.
Oh, so scary.
Of the vampire, and like that gets me more than the blood and the guts and stuff like that. It's even in some of the more recent horror movies. It's in what was The Haunting of Hill House. The scenes where something goes by in the background, and you're not sure if you saw it or not.
Yeah.
That just gets me.
To me, that's horror. That's the great. That's great horror. Hitchcock got it. Knew less is more. Let the imagination play it out. It's going to terrorize you more than the gore scene you want to throw up in our face. Those become so bad, funny sometimes. Me and my kids, I will let them watch some horror movies that are like the B-rated indie movies on Amazon Prime. It's like Zombies. We watched Zombies. That was hilarious. We laughed our butts off. But like the real true horror I won't let them watch is the stuff that makes you imagine, especially my 10-year-old. He's got my imagination. And things drive him nuts if it's not explained or left like, let me in, drove him nuts at the end. He's like, so what? The kid just takes off with her. What's he going to do for a living? And how are they going to live? And is she going to end up feeding off? Like all the questions that came, they don't end the movie right and explain everything away for him. He's going to be thinking about it all night long. He's my son. He's
course,
my little
yeah.
clone, you know. So, but that's the thing. That's what makes great writing and great horror is the stuff that you can leave up to the imagination. You don't have to show the whole picture to everybody. And I feel like nowadays, I don't know what it is like in the book world, but in the movie world, it's not as good about that anymore. It's too much show, too much gore, too much,
Yeah.
just gratuitous violence or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's why I don't watch like the Saw movies or Hostel or, I'm
No.
sure they do scare people, but that's not what I want to get scare. I like the stuff that makes my imagination work for it.
No, it's the atmospheric. I mean, it
Mhm.
comes back. It comes back to the monkey's paw. It
Yeah.
comes back to that story where the three wishes, and it's what you don't see behind the door, and you hear the scratching, and it's behind the door because your imagination is going to be way scarier than if they ever open the door.
Yep.
And even like when I going back to Stephen King, it was terrifying until it became a giant spider. It
Oh,
was
God, yeah.
terrifying as
Yeah.
a clown. It was
I
terrifying
think he
as your
regrets that.
biggest fear, right? And and I'm scared of spiders, but it was kind of like it was when you couldn't, when Pennywise just disappeared into the shadows,
Yeah.
into the sewers, or turned into a werewolf, or turned into whoever the biggest fear was. That's scarier than the big hairy
spider at the
monster.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked bad in the old Tim Curry miniseries, and they still didn't do much better with it in the remake. But again, I let my kids watch that. they love everything, especially scary clowns. My wife hates it, but she
Yeah.
actually sat through that one. But yeah, I'm a big fan of it, like all the way up until the end of the book.
Yeah, yeah. And then you go, what?
Oh, we actually got a phone call. Somebody was brave enough to call
Awesome.
in. We got Dan on the line. How you doing tonight, Dan?
Hey, how's it going? I'm
Doing
brave
good.
enough. I'll take the challenge.
All right, man. What do you got for us tonight, Dan?
Well, sorry.
It's all right.
Hello there, Mark. How are you tonight?
Good, good. How you doing, Dan?
Good. Yeah, that was going to tell you about an experience that I had when I was 18 as well, and I've told Jason a little bit about it. It was, from the result of a Ouija board.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Gonna have a bad time. Usually, there should be a disclaimer
and
for Ouija board stories.
let me tell you, even though you're, like I say, is the most oppressive, negative thing, it was constantly active. You never knew what was going to happen. And yeah, it was just, life changing.
We got about 10 minutes left of the show. You can tell us a little bit of the story.
Yeah, yeah. Give us some details.
Well, it really all started with a shelf. It was kind of like an L-shaped bookcase almost.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandma had owned this before, and she had passed away. I mean, and that grandmother wasn't really too close with, I guess, as my mother and stuff, But anyway, we got that in our house, and I swear, as soon as that came in the house, but I had several nights where I couldn't sleep because the voices I was hearing coming from it, it's so loud.
It's just a shelf, right? You said it's just a shelf.
Right. Just the shelf.
The shelf
And
itself, really.
I realized it was coming from that shelf, but I couldn't sleep unless I had the fan going. I had the radio in my ears, sleeping on my headphones, just to get rest. So then we thought it was a good idea to use a Ouija board.
Oh,
to
yeah.
try
It's
to communicate.
such a good idea.
Were you going to
Yeah,
communicate
good
with
idea there.
what was haunting the shelf?
What was that?
You were going to communicate with whatever was haunting the shelf?
Yeah. That was our intention.
That's what happened.
So we got a few reading materials, our protection candles and all that stuff. Then we went to Toys R Us and bought a toy Ouija board, brought it home. And, Yeah, right. I mean, almost right away, it just activated like, I don't know. It was insane. It was like
When
when
you
me and my
started the board,
girlfriend at
it
the
was
time used it together.
Well, what was it communicating to
Me
you
and-
when you first started the Ouija board? What was it saying?
It came across as a spirit named Gage, a female spirit who had died, and yeah, it was, and that was pretty much the first session, you know. And she,
The first session.
Well, wait a second. You did it again.
Yeah.
right, like I say, it takes over you like a drug, you know.
You did it many
no
times.
matter how much negative stuff is going on, you're still on it, trying to.
Wow.
For some reason, you're still on it.
I can think of a
you know,
reason.
it worked really well. It worked really well when me and my girlfriend used it together, but then it got working really well for me alone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
could feel it. You could feel it. You know, but like I say,
Power
it
of
got
the
so
dark
bad.
side.
I had, you know, looked like breath. You know, usually on my car windshield, and people writing a breath. You know, like die. You know, die Dan.
Oh, geez.
I had a lot of pentagrams. I had a lot of hearts with pentagrams in it.
Showing up as writing on your
a lot
wall.
of upside down. Just on my car windows, car windshield, shower when I shower. You know, like you'd run in somewhere, come out, and your car windows would just be full of like breeze marks with writing in it. It's really pretty creepy. Yeah. I mean, it's just constant impression. I mean, just daily, which it's changed the way I live my life. You know, there's certain things that I be very careful with to this day, you know, upon entering a room or anything, you know, because of that, you know, it kind of changes the way you move around a little.
Wow.
But yeah, and then, you know, it just got worse and worse. And, you know, the last time we used it is when it started moving on its own.
That's usually a lot
Kind
of
of
people's
like a
last
movie,
time.
but it's different.
Wow.
It's kind of like a movie, but it's a whole lot different seeing it in real life.
Yeah.
You know, making
I've seen it.
pentagrams and circles at lightning fast speed, like ridiculous speed.
And it's moving on its
and
own,
then
the
it just
planchette?
flung off. Right. And it just flung off and slammed into the wall, like almost like flat, where it went smack. You know, this flat smack. Oh, yeah. After that, like I say, my friend took it away, and yeah, he knew a little bit, you know, about how to get rid of it and stuff. So he took it.
I
mean,
wish
he
I
had
could
to take it.
I wish I could
He had to
collect
take it.
stories like yours more, like write them all down, because I've had so many people tell me their horrible Ouija board stories, and they they do frighten me. Because I've had some experiences with Ouija boards I screwed around with when I was younger. Wouldn't do it now. I collect them. But what in the end you got rid of the board, but I know you've had a lot of weirdness through your life. I was called your captain, but Dan. But do you feel like that you had something attached to you even after you got rid of the board?
Yes, absolutely. For a while, until I found the means to kind of, you know, rid myself, and I haven't had any problems like that since, I guess.
Just don't touch any
I've
Ouija
had
boards.
plenty of weirdness, but
I know,
yeah.
I know. Well, Dan, thank you so much for calling in and sharing. That's a good one. We
Thanks,
talked
Dan.
a little bit about that, and I got a little more details out of you about it this time too. So, it's creepy, man. Don't mess with Ouija boards, man. Have a great night,
No,
Dan.
do not.
Creepy
See you,
stuff.
man.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll never forget one of my wife's best friends when she was a teenager told me, and I've had so many people tell me Ouija board stories. Like this should be literally, if you could find all these. I mean, there's so many people. You can make a whole book out of. I'm sure you could find enough people to tell you Ouija board stories. You can make a whole book out of it.
Well, there'll be a chapter. I have to try and get a hold of Dan to get some, a chapter on the
Yeah.
Ouija boards and my haunted objects.
There you go. Hear that, Dan? Yeah, hear that, Dan? You have to get a hold. You can get your story in there. Haunted objects. The haunted shelf is a weird one. Have a great night, Dan. But
yeah, but that's where I figured out it was originating from, just by walking in
Never
there
heard
to
of a
where
haunted
the
shelf,
source was.
but anything's possible in this room.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say her story scared the crap out of me because she, and I've heard other people with similar experiences now after this, but hers was one of the first one years ago, she told me, is that they did the Ouija board. They were all teenage girls doing it. And she started getting a beastly, like gnarly growling sound at her door, and then heard scratching at her door, and put the covers over her head and all that stuff. And then in the morning when they opened her door, there's actual claw marks on her door. And then after that, they'll burn the Ouija board, which is a bad idea. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had friends. What are you saying, Dan?
Do you remember boglins from the 90s? Those little creatures in the cage. They're like little puppets. I don't know if you do.
No, I don't.
But yeah, they were kind of little rubber creatures with hands and mouths you could move, and you could move their little eyes.
Oh, yeah. I remember now. Yes. God, I barely remember that, but I do.
That was one of the first things to get out of my house when this first started, because I seen that thing move. At night, you could hear its eyes click around, and you'd look up, and they were floating back and forth.
Oh, my God.
And, I'd leave the room, and I'd come back, and it'd be out of its cage a little bit, so it's like, well, I can't have that in my room anymore.
No. But
it was really scary and oppressive, but at the same time, a little interesting, but really more just, I was absolutely terrified constantly. And my parents, they wouldn't even bother until, like they said, they got a ceiling fan upstairs and the blade started spinning so fast. Well, this is what they told me, that the blade started spinning so fast that the blade shot off and shot right in between them at the table and smacked into the table in between them.
And then they had to blame you.
And they still didn't believe me.
Oh,
they still didn't believe me.
All right, Dan, we gotta end the show. Great telling us your experience, man. They're always incredible. But yeah, we're at the end of the show. Even speaking of Stephen King again, I always thought one of my favorite aspects of The Stand was Captain Tripp's talk to Nadine through the Ouija boards, how she eventually got, and then that he took that from people's Ouija board experiences. You read the book, you could feel that he talked to somebody that's had a Ouija board experience, or he was fascinated by it because he totally works that in with her storyline.
Right,
really
and then
creepy.
they even worked that into the new remake as well.
Mm-hmm. I was so happy because that was not in the original. They didn't put that at all in the TV series, and that always made me mad. And that was one thing I did like about the remake, except for Amber Heard. But I did like that they worked into the whole Ouija board thing, because I was that was one of my favorite aspects to The Stand.
That really added an element to the story that they missed in the other version of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't had anything yours made into a movie or a TV show or a TV
not
series
yet,
yet?
Not yet. I'm still hopeful.
Yeah, be hopeful and scared, because I can't imagine being a writer and then seeing your baby taken and ripped apart by Hollywood producers.
Well, the money's there too. So,
but the money's great, right?
Yeah, I'll just laugh while looking at the money.
Well, Mark, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for being on. What's your website for everybody to check out your work?
markleslie.ca.
There you go, markleslie.ca. Check it out. You got a lot of nonfiction and fiction books. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. But that is it, guys. We will be back next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, with Barbara With. She's a psychic channeler and author herself. Next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. to 1 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. All right, guys. Thanks, everybody who shares out the show. Definitely check us out on Patreon under Paranormal Soup, Jason Bland. You can donate $2 a month, $5 a month. It does help pay the bills for the show. Thank you to everybody who shares out the show. Keep sharing out, telling people about Paranormal Soup, a place where you can discuss the paranormal and the weird happens live every Sunday night. Thank you again, Mark. Everybody, have a great night.
Thanks, Jason.
Hey!